The man was clothed in a dark yellow brocade robe, and there was an air of steadiness and mildness about him, but the mildness was mixed with a trace of stateliness. He was around 45 or so, neither fat nor thin, looking pretty refined. Compared with that of Sky Murong and Earth Murong, the chi of this middle-aged man walking towards the gateway was noticeably more restrained. He was Cloud Murong, the lord of Luoyang City. "You must be really busy, my lord. I've been through a lot to get you here." Yunwu twisted her head around to look at Cloud Murong, who was walking closer, and said in a sneering tone. The face of the captain of guards, who was behind Cloud Murong, darkened as he heard her sneering words. "Watch your mouth, girl. This is the lord of Luoyang City. It's not your place to." However, before the captain of guards could finish his rebuke, the middle-aged man raised his hand and stopped him. "Wait here, all of you." After making this remark in a dignified tone, Cloud Murong walked towards Yunwu. "My name is Cloud Murong. I'm the lord of Luoyang City as well as the father of the girl beneath you whip. May I ask whether you could release my daughter first before we talk?" Cloud Murong didn't get angry, and his chi had been mild and steady all along. He must have already been informed of what had happened earlier. This Cloud Murong was numerous times more restrained than that so-called the second patriarch and the third patriarch. Judging from the fact that he had been composed all along after seeing how his daughter was being treated, his amazing secretiveness was beyond Yunwu's expectation. But after remaining silent for a second, Yunwu twitched her waist and withdrew the whip without saying anything. Seeing that Yunwu compromised so willingly, Sky Murong and the others secretly snorted, thinking that she was afraid of the lord of the city and those garrison soldiers. "Thank you, girl. Would you please tell me the reason why you had me come here by adopting this kind of means?" After giving a glance at Snow Murong, who was sitting on the ground, Cloud Murong knew that this teenage girl hadn't seriously injured Snow Murong and that Snow Murong had just got her legs broken, which meant that she would have to lie in bed for half a month to a full month or so. "I'm looking for someone." Yunwu glimpsed at Thousand Murong and said blandly. "Looking for someone?" Cloud Murong frowned. A guard had just reported to him that she demanded the Murong family to hand over someone. Had the Murong family by any chance taken someone from her? Cloud Murong was not stupid. He instantly turned his head aside and moved his eyes to Thousand Murong, saying in a deep voice, "Chiener, go bring the two people here." Hearing this, those lookers-on suddenly understood. It turned out that the reason why this teenage girl had killed that man, wounded so many people as well as burnt the mansion of the Murong family's offshoot was because the Murong mansion had taken someone from her. But Thousand Murong's face was rather cold and sullen. "My lord, I don't have the person she wants. Everybody can see it, the whole mansion has been burnt down by her. All people have come out." Yunwu slightly curved her lips, but the look in her eyes went cold. "Is that so? It seems that I was being far too merciful to you by burning only those peripheral houses." "Fire dragon," she yelled. Roar! A dragon roar came from those flaming houses, and with that a dragon formed of fire soared up and coiled in mid-air, the air temperature rising drastically. Roar! As if in response to Yunwu's calling, the dragon let out another roar. Those passers-by who had been looking on backed off repeatedly, horror on their faces. Though they had seen it before, people still felt horrified when they caught eyes of it again. Though formed of fire, the dragon possessed chi as potent as that of a magic beast. What kind of means had that teenage girl adopted? How had she managed to do this? "Go burn that treasure house in the secret chamber in the west." With a bland smile, Yunwu ordered the fire dragon coiling in midair. Not only Thousand Murong's face but also that of Sky Murong changed when they heard her remarks. Instantly, Thousand Murong's face darkened. "Little girl, don't go too far. You've already burnt my mansion and yet you want to burn my treasure house as well. You really think the Murong family is afraid of you?" After that, his Tier 9 potent chi could be faintly seen about him. Hearing his words, Yunwu sneered. "I don't know whether the Murong family is afraid of me or not, but some members of the Murong family robbed villagers of their hard-earned medicinal herbs and also took a child and an old woman hostage. I've already shown mercy on you by merely burning your mansion. Since you ungratefully turned down my nice gesture, you'll have to face the consequences you deserve. After saying this, Yunwoo winked at the fire dragon with her purple eyes, and with that the fire dragon raised its head, let out a roar, and was about to fly to the mansion. All of a sudden, a surge of potent water elemental power was hurled towards the fire dragon. Bang! Water element impacted on fire element with a muffled bang, and the fire dragon was broken apart. It was Cloud Murong who made his move. He was rather concerned about the issue that Yunwoo had just said about some members of the Murong mansion robbing villagers of medicinal herbs and hurting them. But the Murong family was the leader of the Luo city, and he couldn't let anybody arbitrarily trample on the dignity of the Murong family. This little girl was acting so aggressively in front of so many people, so Cloud Murong definitely had to do something. With a cold look, Cloud Murong said in a deep voice, "Little girl, we can talk about this in a civilized way. There's no need to be so angry." Yunwoo coldly squinted her purple eyes. "Talk about this in a civilized way. As the lord of the city, you connived at your subordinates robbing villagers of medicinal herbs and bullying them. If you want to talk about this in a civilized way, then I will talk with you in the civilized way of the Murong family." The instant her cold voice broke off, Yunwoo abruptly mobilized the wind element in the air, which soon condensed into numerous wind blades around the whip, and ferociously swung it at the two vermilion lacquered gates behind Thousand Murong. Bang! Bang! With two loud bangs, pieces of wood flew in all directions. The girl and her grandmother only have each other, but you people of the Murong mansion coveted the old woman's Ganoderma and took them hostage. Whether they're alive or not is still unknown. Cloud Murong's face suddenly darkened. Is she telling the truth? If it's not true, how could this teenage girl dare to come here? Instantly, his angry eyes flashed in the direction of Thousand Murong. Sky Murong's face was sepulchral. He had always known that his avaricious son had been secretly sending his men to collect medicinal materials to resell them at a profit. He had never expected that his son's deeds would lead to this situation. Thousand Murong's face, needless to say, was extremely black. He glared at Yunwoo, eyes ablaze with rage. If the lord of the city knew this, severe punishment would surely be inflicted on him. "I came here for the girl, but the nice young mistress of the Murong family came directly at me and aimed to kill me with every saber blow before I could say anything. They also intended to bully me with numerical superiority. You're so shameless. It surprised me that the Murong family isn't too embarrassed to be in charge of this city." Each time Yunwoo finished making a remark, Cloud Murong's face grew more sullen, his eyebrows frowning tightly. "Today, not to mention you, even if the emperor himself came here, I'll still massacre the Murong mansion if you don't set them free and give me an acceptable explanation." Her voice was domineering and as icy cold as a glacier. Hearing that she would still massacre the Murong mansion even if the emperor himself came here, all people present went quiet, as if all people were holding their breath at this moment. That remark was extremely offensive to both the Murong family and the emperor, and it was punishable by death. "These remarks are criminal and far above your station, girl. Disaster emanates from careless talk." Hearing her words, Cloud Murong went angry. No matter how many crimes the Murong family had committed according to her accusations, the words, "massacre the Murong family," alone would make a reason more than sufficient to justify his killing intent. "Is that so? But I only know that disaster emanates from the heart, especially from the hearts of those harboring evil intentions." The look on Cloud Murong's face became icy cold and grim as he heard these words. Potent chi secretly started circulating in his meridians, but he still managed to subdue his anger and killing intent, showing only steadiness on his face. If he launched an attack on a teenage girl in front of so many residents just because she made a few arrogant remarks, people would definitely have unfavorable opinions about the Murong family, especially on this occasion when the girl had accused the Murong family of a series of crimes. Cloud Murong was not the only one who could think of this. Undoubtedly, Yunwoo also knew what Cloud Murong was thinking about, and she had also anticipated that he wouldn't fight her in front of so many people, but this was not her purpose. She glimpsed at the other members of the Murong family. They all had murderous looks in their eyes, as if they were eager to attack her in unison and slash her to death. It seems that you don't quite believe that I'm capable of inflicting a bloodbath on the Murong family. Fine. Today, I'll broaden your horizons. Lips coldly curving up, Yunwoo looked in Cloud Murong's direction with a half-smile on her face. Your attribute is water, right? Eyebrows knitted together, Cloud Murong looked at this teenage girl in front of him. Before Cloud Murong made a response, Yunwoo flipped her palm out of which a ball of water element popped. Then she did the same thing with the other palm and then clasped her hands together. Hiss, hiss. A blood-curdling hiss of snake accompanied by a freezing chi was heard. Yunwoo waved her hand and a giant, blue python formed of water element abruptly appeared out of thin air. At this moment, the air temperature plunged drastically, as if the whole place suddenly dropped into a glacial cave. Hiss, hiss. Coiling in mid-air, the giant python overlooked the people down below with its eerie blue eyes in a seemingly condescending manner. Water attribute. My god, she's triple attributed. Someone among the crowd yelled in astonishment, and with that all lookers-on gasped in unison. Sky Murong and the others were also unusually surprised. Triple attributed. This teenage girl was actually triple attributed. Cloud Murong was also amazed and somewhat shocked. This girl appeared to be merely 15 or 16, but she was terrifyingly powerful. Besides, judging from her words, he was afraid that she hadn't displayed her full strength yet. But with her trump cards staying hidden, her aura was already so mighty and awe-inspiring. If they let her keep growing stronger. Today, if you don't hand over them to me, I'll set the whole Luo city by the ears before I massacre the Murong mansion, Yunwoo said in a cold voice tinged with a trace of arrogance. Wind element popped out and she clasped her hands together. Roar, roar. The contours of a green beast that looked like a tiger condor emerged out of thin air. However, with her current strength, she was only capable of condensing element into Tier 4 elemental beasts, but the aura about this wind elemental beast seemed just as mighty as that tiger condor that she saw in that valley that day. The vitalization of two sorts of element had cost Yunwoo more than half of her power, but in order to overawe the opponents, she flipped her hands again and clasped two flames together. Roar. The fire dragon, which had just been broken apart by Cloud Murong, reappeared. Wind, fire and water, three different temperature and chi instantly pervaded the whole place. Standing below the three elemental beasts, Yunwoo slightly squinted her purple eyes in which bloodthirstiness and frenzy glinted, her black hair flying though it was windless. She didn't have much strength left, but the dash she was giving off was awe-inspiring. Looking at the three elemental beasts coiling in mid-air, Cloud Murong could feel that they were all at Tier 4. Given that he was in Tier 9, they didn't count as a major threat to him. However, he couldn't see through this teenage girl since she was too mysterious. He worried that she still had something up her sleeve. With a deep frown, Cloud Murong kept silent. At this moment, the whole space fell into quietness. There were hundreds of passers-by looking on, but none of them was talking at this instant. As if even the sound of a needle dropping on the ground could be heard, they just looked at the three elemental beasts coiling in mid-air, waiting for Cloud Murong's response. It was completely quiet. After quite a while. Qianer, did you or not imprison the little girl and her grandmother that this girl mentioned? Cloud Murong raised his eyes and looked at Thousand Murong, asking in a deep voice. Thousand Murong's face alternated between red and black restlessly, but at this moment, he answered reluctantly, yesterday, elder brother-in-law did tell me that he took a little girl back. As regards whether that girl is the one she wanted, I don't know. Cloud Murong's face slightly darkened as he heard this. Go. Bring them here. Frowning, Thousand Murong gave a sideways glance at Yunwoo and then looked in Cloud Murong's direction. Your lordship, however, before he could finish his sentence, Sky Murong's eyes flashed in his direction. Qianer, do what his lordship told you to do. Under this circumstance, if some other issue arose, things might really become too tricky for the Murong family to handle. Thousand Murong was consumed with anger, but he still ordered the guards beside him, "Go bring the person elder uncle took back." Young master, the fire is so big. I'm afraid the dungeon was already." They were at the gateway but could still feel the fierce heat, and the fire was very close to them. The guard believed that everything in the dungeon must have been burnt to ashes. Thousand Murong secretly hoped that the girl had died in the fire. This girl is so arrogant. If the little girl died in the fire, then there will be no evidence and she won't be able to act so haughtily any longer. But before the guard finished his sentence, Yunwu raised her hand and with that the icy python in mid-air flew towards the fierce fire. Zh. Wherever the python flew over, everything on fire spat, as if someone had poured water on them. Soon, the big fire was put out. There were barely any houses left in the Murong mansion. However, the area amid which the dungeon was located stayed intact. "Your lordship, please come with me. Otherwise, I'm afraid someone is going to kill me to make sure there's no witness." Yunwu curved her lips but darted a glance at Thousand Murong with a sneer. Thousand Murong was annoyed, face livid. What did she mean? Frowning, Cloud Murong glanced at Yun and then walked towards the gate. Yunwu waved her hand at the fire dragon and tiger condor which then instantly disappeared into thin air. At the same time, Yunwu walked inside the Murong mansion with Cloud Murong. Seeing this, Sky Murong and Earth Murong naturally followed them. Seeing that they entered the Murong mansion, those passers-by that had been looking on outside the gate stayed with tacit agreement, as if they were waiting to see what would happen next. "Guys, who on earth do you think that triple-attributed teenage girl is? She's so tough. I think she must be a member of some secluded family." All people started whispering to each other. It was very likely that before long the news would spread through the whole Luo city and then ripple towards nearby towns. But not long before. In the Ouyang mansion in the Water City. Having failed to bring back the vigor grass, Ouyang Qing and the others were sitting in a living room at their wits' end. Thinking of the man and the girl they had met that day, Ouyang Qing couldn't help rubbing his brows, a wry and resigned smile on his face. "We have to find another way. I believe the Murong family is in the same situation. The doctor said that father's condition required immediate treatment. What else can we do?" In the living room, a middle-aged man said in a deep voice, frowning. "Later, I'll invite the medic here again," Ouyang Qing said. But there was an expectant glint in his eyes. "Maybe, we can try find that girl. If she knows the situation we're in, maybe she'll give the vigor grass to us. Kur, give up that fond hope. Don't forget that that girl already has a grand kung fu master around her." Ouyang Qing looked at him with a sullen look. He knew exactly what he was thinking about. Ouyang Ku frowned but didn't contradict. But that middle-aged man seemed to have noticed that their conversation had some subtexts. He lifted his eyebrows and looked at Ouyang Qing. "What's going on?" Ouyang Qing sighed. "Nothing special. It's just that your son fell for that girl." Hearing this, the middle-aged man, who was also the lord of Water City, Ouyang Yume, raised his eyebrows and a look of surprise crossed his face. Kur has always been choosy about girls. Since this one caught his fancy, I guess she must be a special girl. How could she be not special? She was the very girl who took the vigor grass. What? Hearing this, Ouyang Yu frowned. However, at this moment, a guard reported loudly outside the door, "Your lordship, scouts sent a message here from the Luo city." "Come in," Ouyang Yu said blandly. Soon, a guard carrying a letter with both hands quickly walked in and respectfully handed the letter to Ouyang Yu. And then he took his leave. A message from the Luo city. Did the Murong family by any chance find the vigor grass? Ouyang Qing frowned. Ouyang Ku also looked in the direction of the letter. Ouyang Yu opened the envelope. When he saw the contents of the letter, a surprised look appeared on his face which was usually steady and mild. "What's it about? Why are you having this look?" Ouyang Yu handed the letter to Ouyang Qing, who also showed a surprised look on his face while reading the letter. A 15 or 16-year-old girl who was triple attributed and in early stage of Tier 7. And she also possessed the mysterious ability to condense element into tangible elemental beasts. The letter also sketched what the girl had done in the Murong mansion. But these were more than enough to amaze them. Ouyang also took the letter, but after he read it, his eyes lit up. With a skeptical look, he said, "Second uncle, do you think it's possible that this teenage girl mentioned in the letter is the same girl that we met in the Magic Beasts forest? A teenage girl in early stage of Tier 7 with weird capabilities. All these conformed to the characteristics of the girl they had met in the forest. Besides, to find a teenage girl with such extraordinary endowments in this world was like to seek a needle at the bottom of the ocean." Hearing this, Ouyang seemed to have suddenly realized something. He instantly stood up from the chair. "Let's go to the Luo city and check it out. If she was really that girl, then she had the vigor grass. They couldn't afford to let the Murong family beat them to it." Ouyang's eyes lit up. In the Luoyang city, faces of the members of the Murong family darkened when they saw how much damage the fire had caused to the mansion. Sky Murong, in particular, found it heartrending to see this scene. This mansion was his. All those decorations and furnishings had cost him a lot of money. There had also been many antiques in it. Now, they had all been destroyed. No wonder the scene wrung his heart. Along the way, they saw that almost everything had been burnt. But when approaching the dungeon, everybody felt a twinge of surprise. Almost everything in the mansion had been burnt to the ground, but within a short radius of the dungeon, everything remained intact. Even the grass was still luxuriant. Seeing this, Cloud Murong, who was walking side by side with Yunwu, couldn't help giving a deep gaze at her. Surprisingly, she had controlled the fire and made sure that it wouldn't spread to this dungeon. It seemed that she had known in advance that the person she wanted was in this dungeon. And with her power, it was not difficult for her to break into the dungeon and rescue the girl at all. But instead, she had made such a scene outside the mansion. Clearly she had done that to force him to come here. Every detail had been well planned. She had not only successfully provoked the Murong family but also humiliated them, and she had also made sure that the Murong family wouldn't dare to go too hard on her. What a shrewd girl. What was her purpose of luring him here exactly? Of course Yunwu knew that Cloud Murong had been sizing her up with his deep eyes, but she generously let him. Then they stopped at the gateway of the dungeon. "Open the gate and bring them out." Yunwu turned her head aside and looked at nobody else but Cloud Murong. Cloud Murong's tightly knitted his eyebrows. Was she asking him to go inside and take the girl out himself? Sky Murong and Earth Murong were standing behind. Hearing her words, their faces abruptly darkened. Sky Murong said to the guard beside him, "Go inside and bring them here." Having the order, the guard was just about to walk towards the gate of the dungeon when Yunwu slightly raised her right hand, produced a fireball out of thin air and threw it to the ground in front of the guard. Bang! A muffled explosion was heard. Scared, the guard immediately backed off. "What are you doing?" Thousand Murong, who had been standing at the side, finally ran out of tolerance and glared sideways at Yunwu. Yunwu curved her lips in a sneer and said with a piercing look in her eyes, "If you want me to let this go, demonstrate some sincerity." Sky Murong and the others were consumed with anger. Tension was rapidly reaching flashpoint. Cloud Murong was indeed a competent lord of the city. He took a deep breath and subdued the anger in him, displaying his capability of keeping a steady and restrained manner under any circumstance. When they were at daggers drawn, Cloud Murong said in a deep voice, "Enough. Wait here, all of you." After that, he took the key from the guard's hand and walked towards the dungeon. He opened the gate of the dungeon and saw that there was a staircase stretching down. He walked in and was greeted by a strong, musty smell. Cloud Murong knitted his eyebrows but still walked downwards step by step. There were torches fixed on the walls of the underground chamber, so it was fairly bright. At the end of the staircase, he saw a passage with cells fitted with iron bars on both sides. The two people were locked up respectively in two different cells opposite to each other. Grandma Medicine opened her eyes and looked in the direction of the dungeon gate as she heard the sound of someone opening it. However, when she saw the figure walking downwards, her skeletal body gave a violent shiver, and tears instantly welled up in her eyes which seemed to have witnessed countless vicissitudes of life. Her skinny hands were clasped tightly together, as if she was trying hard to suppress something. Cloud Murong walked up to the two cells in which there were an old woman and a little girl respectively. Gray-haired, the old woman was seemingly in her 70s or 80s. She was sitting on the ground with her back against the wall. There were some wounds on her. For some reason, Cloud Murong had an inexplicable feeling that this old woman looked somewhat familiar. The little girl was merely 10 years old or so. She was lying on a layer of straw on the ground, unconscious. He could tell that she had been tortured. Cloud Murong involuntarily frowned. But at this moment, footsteps came from behind. Yunwu walked down the staircase. When she saw the scene in the cells, an angry and murderous look flashed across her purple eyes, but then she saw Grandma Medicine's red eyes and managed to control herself. Click. The door of the cell was unlocked and Yunwu walked in immediately. Grandma Medicine. Are you okay? Grandma Medicine shook her head and pointed at the opposite cell somewhat anxiously. I'm fine. Go check on Little Leaf for me. Hurry. Yunwu felt Grandma Medicine's pulse and confirmed that she was fine. Then she turned around and walked to another cell. She didn't wait for Cloud Murong to unlock the door but produced a big saber and slashed the lock open. She walked inside and immediately felt Little Leaf's pulse. Her pulse was feeble, but she was still alive. Little Leaf's originally sallow face was deathly pale. She had been whipped and her small body was a mass of bruises. Her hands had been cruelly pinched by clamps and were covered in blood. Rage consumed Yunwu when she saw those wounds on Little Leaf. Killing aura instantly surged out of her and pervaded the whole dungeon. Standing outside the cell, Cloud Murong felt a pang of horror. Without abundant experience of killing, even an assassin couldn't have killing aura as horrifying as hers. Who was this teenage girl exactly? Previously, Yunwu had exerted her spiritual power to search the mansion, and she had known their positions, but she hadn't expected that Little Leaf had been tortured and that she was dying. She recalled that the day before yesterday Little Leaf coaxed her into drinking the medicine and changed the dressings for her, but now she was lying on the ground in this cell, half dead. The fury in her could be subdued no more. She was furious, extremely furious. The kill aura she was giving off was so intense that it seemed to be becoming tangible. Well, girl. Since this little girl's injury is very serious, let's get out of here first. Then we go back to the Murong mansion and have a doctor treat her. What do you say? Cloud Murong said. Maybe he had been shocked by the killing aura about her. With a cold look in her eyes, Yunwu cautiously carried Little Leaf, stood up and walked out of the cell. Carry Grandma Medicine and follow me out of here. An order. Yes, she said that in an imperative tone. Cloud Murong was rather displeased, but he still walked into the cell, carried that somewhat familiar old woman on his back and followed her out of the dungeon. When Sky Murong and the others, who had been waiting outside the dungeon, saw that Yunwu was carrying a little girl covered in blood, they all frowned. They were still alive. But when they saw Cloud Murong, who was behind Yunwu and carrying a gray-haired, dirty old woman on his back, the face of every one of them instantly changed. Your lordship, how could you degrade yourself and carry an old woman like her? Your lordship. Those guards hurriedly went forward. Yunwu, who was walking in front of them, said coldly without turning her head back, if you want the Murong mansion to be burnt to the ground as well, just let them carry her for you. After saying this, Yunwu didn't wait to see how they would react but just enwrapped herself with wind element, leaped upwards, turned into a rapid blur and disappeared into mid-air in the blink of an eye. All people present were startled. Her speed was even faster than that of Cloud Murong. What kind of speed was that? Above the luxurious mansion located in the middle of the busiest street in the city, a figure flashed over and then landed on the ground. This was the main mansion of the Murong family. Having sensed that someone had intruded from above, a team of guards instantly flooded over. It seemed that the Murong mansion had taken measures to guard against potential intrusion from above. "Who are you? You dare to intrude in the Murong mansion?" However, right at this moment, a dignified voice came from the sky. "Leave us, all of you." Carrying grandma medicine on his back, Cloud Murong also descended from midair. Seeing this, those guards abruptly widened their eyes in amazement, but they still took their leave right away. "Lead the way." Yunwoo glanced at Cloud Murong and said no more. Cloud Murong frowned but still walked in the direction of guest rooms. Along the way, all handmaids and servants were surprised by the scene of Cloud Murong carrying a dirty old woman on his back. What was going on? Why did his lordship carry an old woman back? Various speculations spread through the whole Murong family, and then people heard the news about what had happened to the mansion of the Murong family's offshoot. In the East Garden Pavilion. In a guest room, after settling Little Leaf on a bed, Yunwoo said to Cloud Murong, "Have someone get me some clean water." There was really not much politeness in her tone. Sitting on a couch at the side, Grandma Medicine hadn't said anything so far, her old eyes fixed on Cloud Murong. Cloud Murong had frowned numerous times, feeling rather weird. Although Cloud Murong still found Yunwoo's imperative tone uncomfortable, he was gradually getting used to it. He had someone prepared a basin of clean water as well as gauze and scissors. Cloud Murong didn't leave but stood on the side and watched Yunwoo neatly dealing with Little Leaf's wounds. When Yunwoo was treating Little Leaf's fingers which had already been broken by clamps, Cloud Murong was shocked. 2 of Little Leaf's fingers had been deformed. She had to dislocate them first and then reset the bones. The skills she used were weird and the scene was unusually gory. Ignoring Cloud Murong's presence, Yunwoo produced some vulneraries, which she had made previously, as well as some medicinal materials out of the storage space. Then she applied the drug to the wounds and bandaged them up. When the treatment was done, though there was still a frown on Little Leaf's face, her breathing became steady. Seeing all this with his own eyes, Cloud Murong was very surprised. Judging from her neat and skillful movements, her medical skills were definitely not bad, though they were somewhat uncanny. Involuntarily, the look in his eyes became rather fevered. He wondered whether she could treat the rare disease that his father had caught. After treating Little Leaf, Yunwoo continued to dress the wounds on Grandma Medicine. When everything was done, Yunwoo washed her hands, raised her eyes and looked at Cloud Murong who was also looking at her. "Don't give me that look. I don't like members of your family." She made this remark quickly and abruptly. An embarrassed look flashed across Cloud Murong's face. He was somewhat discontented. This teenage girl had always been so impolite. "Girl, I can tell that your medical skills are pretty good. I wonder if you can." But before he could finish speaking, Yunwoo interrupted him coldly, "As regards your father's illness, I have no interest in it, and neither can I treat it. However, since you're such a dutiful son, why are you so unconcerned with your own mother?" Hearing the last remark, Grandma Medicine abruptly froze and a surprised, flustered look flashed across her old eyes. She called nervously, "Mississippi Woo." During the days when Yunwoo had been living with Little Leaf and her grandmother, Yunwoo didn't use the name Yunwoo. No matter what, she believed that now was not the right time to let others know her by the name of Yunwoo, so she had told them the name that she had used in her last incarnation, which was Wu Feng. How did she know? Hearing Yunwoo's words, Cloud Murong knitted his eyebrows tightly together. What did she mean by that last remark? His mother had died right after giving birth to him. How could he show concern to her? "Your lordship, elder madam is here," a guard suddenly reported at the doorway. Before long, the door was opened. A middle-aged female gloriously clothed in dull red brocade clothes walked inside in a dignified manner with the assistance of a handmaid. "Yunner, I heard that you brought that person home." The one who had burnt the offshoot mansion and also wounded my grandson. On hearing the voice, Grandma Medicine gave a shiver and her face abruptly went pale. She subconsciously turned her body aside, as if trying to hide herself. Yunwoo noticed all these reactions of hers. "Mother," seeing that woman, Cloud Murong called in a fairly respectful tone. Cloud Murong's calling that woman mother wrung Grandma Medicine's heart. She clasped her hands tightly together, as if trying hard to subdue something. Concubine Chu was Cloud Murong's stepmother, Sky Murong and Earth Murong's natural mother as well as the mistress of the Murong mansion. As soon as Concubine Chu walked in, she cast a gaze in the direction of Yunwoo who was wearing gunny clothes, sizing her up with extremely piercing eyes. Arms folded across her chest, Yunwoo also moved her eyes on that woman, sizing her up in the same way. That woman appeared to be about 50, with a slightly fat figure and fairly white skin. Judging from her features, she probably had been a very beautiful woman when she had been young, but her meridians indicated that she was at least in her 60s. In this exotic world, as people cultivated, the gap between their actual age and the age they appeared to be would become increasingly wider. Although this concubine Chu was merely in Tier 5, compared with Grandma Medicine who couldn't cultivate, she looked much younger. "So you are the one who made a scene in the offshoot mansion?" Concubine Chu asked in a deep voice. Not only had Thousand Murong, her favorite grandson, been wounded, but also his whole mansion had been burnt to the ground. Having been informed that Cloud Murong not only hadn't meted out punishment to that person but also had brought her back and settled her in a guest room, she naturally came here to take a look. Yunwoo gave an apathetic glimpse at her and slightly curved her lips. "I am." "Well, now that you admitted it, then we shall send you to the Yamen. 1. Yamen is a government office in feudal China. Guards, break this woman's legs, tie her up and send her to the Yamen." Concubine Chu's eyes were cold. Hearing her order, those guards outside the room immediately poured inside and walked towards Yunwoo. "Stop. Don't hurt her." At this moment, an old voice suddenly emanated from the couch. Everybody was stunned by this sudden voice. Grandma Medicine slowly struggled to stand up from the couch, raising her old eyes, which had witnessed vicissitudes of her life, to meet the piercing ones of Concubine Chu. Concubine Chu forehead furrowed when she saw senile Grandma Medicine. Clearly, it was not until Grandma Medicine stood up from the couch to slowly walk towards her that she recognized her. Concubine Chu's pupils suddenly contracted and her face became somewhat hideous. Almost subconsciously, she blurted in a brittle voice, "It's you. You're still alive." Grandma Medicine looked at Concubine Chu whose face had just changed, wryness tinged with bitterness glinting in her eyes which had witnessed vicissitudes of her life. "I also hoped that I had died in that accident that you arranged, so that I wouldn't have to watch my own younger sister take my life, my husband and my son away from me." Her remarks induced waves of shock in everybody's mind like a giant rock dropped into a still-surfaced lake. Her own younger sister. Taking her life away from her. And her husband and son. That old woman was referring to elder mistress. How was it possible? She was almost old enough to be elder mistress's mother. However, Concubine Chu's face abruptly changed as if provoked, eyes ablaze with anger. "What are you still standing there for? Take these people to the Yamen." 1. Yamen is a government office in feudal China, right away. They dare to talk nonsense here. They're courting death. Hearing this, the guards were about to take action. All of a sudden, with a gleam of cold light, a big saber was swung downwards. Clang! The saber hit the marble ground, generating a shower of sparks. The after effects of the impact rippled through the floor beneath everybody's feet. "Whoever dares to touch her will lose his hands and feet." Her extremely callous and domineering voice was heard by everyone in the room. Angry, Concubine Chu thundered, "How dare you be so unruly in Murong Mansion? Kill them." Those guards' eyes became ferocious after hearing the order. They whipped out their swords and launched an attack on Yunwoo and Grandma Medicine. With a cold in her eyes, Yunwoo moved sideways to the front of Grandma Medicine, swinging the saber laterally at those guards in an extremely uncanny manner. Bang, bang. Two ringing sounds of sabers dropping to the ground were heard. Without any fierce moves, she cut off the arms of the two guards in front of the others with only one saber slash. Watching blood gushing out of the wounds in their arms, the two guards who were at the front widened their eyes in horror, and sharp pain instantly surged through their nerves. Ah! Two pained screams were heard, horrifying the other guards behind them. Concubine Chu's heart lurched. This teenage girl actually can. Enough. All of you, finally, Cloud Murong intervened, reprimanding. Seeing that Cloud Murong stopped the guards, Concubine Chu looked at him with a displeased frown. Yunner. You can't. But before she could finish speaking, the look on his face scared her silent. Cloud Murong's face, which had always been mild and steady, was now icy, unusually icy. Literally, take elder mistress to the living room, the order was given in a cold voice and nobody dared to disobey. The handmaid beside Concubine Chu stretched out her hand to assist Concubine Chu, who then got angry, eyes ablaze with anger, but she didn't disobey Cloud Murong's order in public. She pushed that handmaid aside, twitched her hand and led those guards out of the room. The room returned to quietness, but the atmosphere was a little intense. What are you going to do about it? Before you answer, I'd like to make this straight. From now on, Grandma Medicine's issues are my issues. If anyone dares to bully her or have some kind of stupid ideas, then he or she will make an enemy of me. Originally, she had had no interest in intervening in their family issues, but since Grandma Medicine had once saved her life and the Murong family had happened to have offended her, she might as well push the boat along with the current and help Grandma Medicine get back what was rightfully hers, thinking of it as returning the favor she owed Grandma Medicine. As regards why she had known Grandma Medicine's relation with the Murong mansion, actually it hadn't been difficult for her to deduce. Apart from Grandma Medicine's unusual reactions to the Murong family, she had also accidentally found out an issue from the guard who had led the way. All members of the Murong family bore a kind of special totemic symbol on them, and previously, she had accidentally saw one on Grandma Medicine's shoulder, which was the word, wilderness. The venerable master of the Murong family's name was Wilderness Murong. Her deductions and Grandma Medicine's reactions had added up to the answer. This was also the exact reason why she had forced Cloud Murong to intervene. All this aside, it was also the only way to save that small village of Simplicity. Since they had offended the Murong family, it was very unlikely that villagers of the small village could return to their previous peaceful life, so she might as well make this complicated situation even more complicated. Is this your original purpose? Without answering her question, Cloud Murong glanced at Grandma Medicine and then gazed at Yun Wu with a cold look in his eyes. Smiling wryly, Yun Wu looked him in the eye, sort of. Actually, there had been another reason. Even if what she said is true, it will be the Murong family's family issue. As an outsider, don't you think you are being a busybody? Staring at Yun Wu, Cloud Murong said. Grandma Medicine's heart lurched when she heard his remarks. Did this mean that he believed her? Yun Wu took out a handkerchief and started wiping the blood off the saber in a seemingly leisurely manner. I'm not interested in your family issue, but not long ago, I decided that I would regard Grandma Medicine as my own grandmother. I won't allow anybody to bully my relative. Those casual words were said in a highly arrogant and domineering tone. She wouldn't allow anybody to bully her relative. Hearing her words, Cloud Murong was briefly stunned. But the next second, a piercing look flashed across the bottom of his eyes. The cold look in his eyes was replaced by his normal steadiness, and an inexplicable smile suddenly appeared on his face. Since you've made your point clear to such an extent, then as your godfather, I definitely won't let my mother suffer from any grievance. Yun Wu's hands with which she was wiping the saber abruptly paused. Godfather? What godfather? Suddenly, light dawned on Yun Wu. Frowning, she looked at Cloud Murong, who was smiling mildly. Cloud Murong, don't regard yourself as someone you're not. However, Cloud Murong didn't give her the chance to finish her speaking. After nodding at Grandma Medicine with a smile, he quickly turned around and left the room. He behaved as if he had made up his mind to regard her as his goddaughter, which seemed a little shameless. Yunwoo knitted her brows together tightly. Mississippi Woo, actually you didn't have to do these things for me. I have resigned myself to my fate a long time ago, Grandma Medicine said with a sigh, sorrow glinting in her eyes which had witnessed numerous ups and downs of her life. Today, her son had carried her and walked such a distance. She had no regrets now. Besides, she was unwilling to let her husband see her current senile looks. Granny, if you really have resigned yourself to your fate, you would have kept that symbol of the Murong family on your shoulder. With Grandma Medicine's pharmacological knowledge, she could get rid of that symbol at any time, but she hadn't done that. Instead, she had been keeping it for decades. If she had really given up and made peace with destiny, she wouldn't have shown sorrow in her eyes so frequently, and she wouldn't have stayed single to this age either. When Grandma Medicine heard Yunwoo's remarks, her heart lurched and she felt somewhat bitter and pensive. Yes. During the past few decades, if she had really resigned herself to her fate, she wouldn't have kept this symbol, but even if she had refused to resign herself to her fate, even if she had wanted to fight her fate, what else could she have done? Granny, thank you for saving my life. I'll return the favor. I've just said that I'll regard you as my grandmother, so from now on, you are my grandmother. I'll help you get back what's rightfully yours if you want, looking at Grandma Medicine, Yunwoo said seriously. Grandma Medicine was stunned but soon understood that she was backing her up and offering to help her take revenge. How did she feel? She felt pensive, touched and grateful. She had lived a few extra decades and also suffered for a few extra decades. Now she was already in her 70s and didn't have much time left. She was just a teenage girl, but she was willing to make an enemy of the Murong family to help her, an old woman who didn't have many years ahead. Was it worth the risk? Grandma Medicine's eyes slightly reddened as she looked at Yunwoo. Mississippi Woo, I'm just an old woman. Am I worth you doing this? Slightly curving her lips, Yunwoo reached out her hand and slowly wiped off the tears at the corners of Grandma Medicine's eyes. In her last incarnation, she had been an orphan who had been taken to a killer organization to receive training since childhood. She had never had any concepts of kinship, and neither had she had any previous experience of it. Maybe having a grandmother was a pretty nice attempt for her. As long as I think it's worth it, then it's worth it. Granny, just think of it as you getting an extra granddaughter. All you have to do is be happy about it. You don't have to worry about what's coming next. Now that she had intervened, then she would naturally get the job done. Before long, Cloud Murong had a servant send 3 suits of clothes to their room. Now that she had decided to retaliate against the Murong mansion, Yunwoo naturally wouldn't be polite. She asked Grandma Medicine to change. She herself also changed those gunny clothes to the light blue brocade clothes that had just been sent here. Little Leaf's clothes had been put aside. With those wounds, she wouldn't be able to get out of bed in a day or two. After they changed, Yunwoo took some jewels out of the storage space and helped Grandma Medicine dress up. Though Grandma Medicine looked a lot older than Concubine Chu due to her gray hair and wrinkles, with Yunwoo's impressive makeup skills, there was an air of natural nobility and dignity about Grandma Medicine. There was a saying, clothes make a man just as a saddle makes a horse. Though Grandma Medicine was old, her intrinsic temperament was still in her. And with just a little efforts, it was fully revealed. Looking into the mirror, Grandma Medicine was somewhat stunned. Granny, the most beautiful woman is the most confident one, Yunwoo whispered into Grandma Medicine's ears like a hypnotist. Hearing this, Grandma Medicine couldn't help laughing. Wooer, Granny is already over 70. I'm an old woman now. As long as you have your confidence, your inward beauty will not wane a little bit even when you're 90. So, Granny, if you really want to get back what you have lost, then there's no need for you to be afraid. You just have to think that this Murong family has always been your home, and that in this home, there are your son and your husband, said Yunwoo very seriously. That kind of seriousness was engraved in Grandma Medicine's heart like an incantation. Her home. Her husband and her son. Previously, Yunwoo had noticed that Grandma Medicine was inexplicably afraid of that Concubine Chu. Maybe something happened in the past had cast a shadow over her life, which had lasted decades. So, before they walked out of this room, she needed grandma medicine to get rid of this shadow. In the main living room. At this moment, a lot of people were sitting in the roomy, luxurious living room. Apart from Sky Murong and Earth Murong, there were also some of their uncles. The one who had summoned these people here was naturally Concubine Chu. "Why exactly did you summon us here so urgently today?" In a commanding tone, an old man sitting in the first seat on the right side asked Concubine Chu, who was sitting in the host seat. These elders were rarely summoned if there wasn't anything important. Concubine Chu said to that old man in a fairly respectful tone, "Third uncle, the reason why I summoned my uncles and elder brothers here was because there is an important family issue that requires your presence." Hearing this, those elders sitting in the living room frowned. What kind of issue? Yun'er is the lord of the city. What issue can't he handle? That's right. What kind of issue requires a bunch of old men to offer help? If Yun'er were able to handle this thing, I wouldn't have disturbed you, uncles, said Concubine Chu with a pitiful look. Seeing the look on Concubine Chu's face, those elders all believed that something serious had happened. What is it? Stop dawdling and cut to the chase, a short-tempered old man sitting on the left side yelled in an abrupt tone. Hearing this, Concubine Chu seemed to have gained some confidence. "A woman burnt our offshoot mansion to the ground and also wounded my grandson Qianer as well as a lot of guards. Now she's come to my house with an old woman." Yun'er was bewildered by that old woman's words. Bewildered? What do you mean? Yun'er is the lord of the city. How could he be so easily bewildered by some old woman, said the old man whom she called third uncle, a commanding and grim look on his face. That's true. With Yun'er's current strength, who can bewilder him? Seeing that these elders didn't believe her, Concubine Chu secretly clenched her teeth and then said to Sky Murong and his brother who was sitting on the side, "You two, tell you uncles whether I'm telling the truth." Third uncle, what my mother said was true. Today, the whole offshoot mansion was burnt down by that girl. She also wounded Qianer and killed the elder brother of my daughter-in-law, Sky Murong said coldly. Earth Murong also supported them. There's more to it. That girl blustered that she would massacre our family, and she also broke Snow's legs. Thousands of people on the East Avenue saw it, but his lordship not only didn't punish that girl but also took her and that old woman to main mansion. They were settled right in the East Garden Pavilion. Talking about what Cloud Murong had done, the two brothers were very angry. Hearing their words, the third uncle's solemn face instantly darkened. Is that so? The faces of all the other elders also abruptly darkened. One of them smacked his hand hard onto the surface of the table beside him. How dare him? Seeing that her uncles were all consumed with fury, Concubine Chu was secretly rejoiced and intended to add fuel to the flames of their rage. But at this moment, why was somebody saying, "How dare you"? Who's been stirring up enmity? A slow, callous voice emanated from the doorway. All people looked in the direction of the source of the voice. They saw that two figures slowly walked inside in a leisurely manner. On the sight of Grandma Medicine who was walking in the front, those elders frowned, but soon, as if something had suddenly occurred to them, a flicker of surprise flashed across the bottom of their eyes. Sky Murong and the others were also stunned when they saw the one walking towards them. Dressed in light blue brocade clothes, with beautiful black hair and purple eyes, Yunwu walked into the living room supporting Grandma Medicine. Step by step, they walked towards Concubine Chu who was sitting in the host seat. When the two approached her, Concubine Chu abruptly collected herself and looked at Grandma Medicine who had dressed up. A murderous look on her face, she thundered, "Who let this old woman in exactly? Guards! Get her out of here immediately!" Hearing Concubine Chu's angry yelling, those elders sitting in the living room also collected themselves. For guards instantly rushed in and quickly walked towards Yunwu and Grandma Medicine. However, before they could approach, a big saber appeared out of thin air with a gleam of cold light and violently sank into the marble floor with a loud clang, erected in front of the 4 guards. Anyone goes beyond this saber will die. Yunwoo didn't turn her head back, but her icy cold voice, as if from the hell, resounded through the whole living room. Involuntarily, people in this room felt a wave of fear. Not long ago, she had cut off the arms of 2 guards with a single saber slash in the East Garden Pavilion, and the news had almost spread through the whole Murong mansion. This cold voice actually scared the 4 guards, and they didn't dare to move any further. At this moment, supported by Yunwoo, Grandma Medicine had walked to the front of Concubine Chu, who was sitting in the host seat. Looking at livid-faced Concubine Chu with an icy look in her purple eyes, Yunwoo asked coldly, "Will you stand up yourself or should I make you to?" "What?" Concubine Chu was stunned, and with that her pupils abruptly contracted, eyes ablaze with anger. "You little bitch," bang. Instantly, a ringing snap of a chair breaking was heard. Upon Concubine Chu's mean words, she directly fell to the pile of smashed chair on the ground with a thud. Yunwoo twitched her hand and a surge of potent wind elemental power hurtled past them. When the others gave the next blink, Concubine Chu had rolled all the way to a corner of the living room along with those pieces of wood, looking a total mess. A whip sprang out of thin air, and with a wave of Yunwoo's hand, the whip wrapped itself around the legs of a chair and pulled the chair to the host position in a quick and steady manner. "Granny, sit down," and then Yunwoo settled Grandma Medicine, who was also stunned, in that chair. She had accomplished these movements in a short stretch. "Mother! Mother!" Sky Murong and Earth Murong reacted. Their faces abruptly darkened, and in the blink of an eye, they rushed to the corner and helped Concubine Chu, who was pathetically embarrassed, to her feet. You good-for-nothing fatheads. What are you standing there for? Kill her." Now, having never been humiliated this way, Concubine Chu glared at Yunwoo and thundered in a shrill voice as soon as she regained her footing. Hearing this, those guards didn't dare hesitate. Immediately, they whipped out their swords and charged at Yunwoo. Curving her lips, Yunwoo waved her wrist and swung the whip at them. Before they could approach her, 4 figures were hit and thrown away. With 4 muffled thuds, the 4 guards fell to the ground. Extremely sepulchral look appeared on those elders' faces when they saw this scene, and their eyes reddened with anger. This girl was arrogant enough to make such a scene in front of them. "You're courting death." Several elders mobilized their powerful chi and were about to make their moves. "Old men, before you make your moves, make sure you know which one of them is the real mistress of the Murong family, lest you take the wrong side," said Yunwoo coldly. Meanwhile, earth elemental power instantly pervaded the whole living room. She was trying to overawe them. A Tier 7 Kung Fu master who was only a teenager. Feeling that chi, those elders present clearly were stunned. Earth element. Sky Murong and Earth Murong's pupils abruptly contracted, a wave of fear sweeping over them. This was the 4th elemental power she had shown. She actually. As if by tacit agreement, killing intent appeared in the eyes of the 2 brothers at the same time. This girl must be eliminated. Powerful Tier 9 and Tier 8 fighting spirit were mobilized, and the 2 brothers launched an attack on Yunwoo at lightning speed. A cold look flashed across the bottom of Yunwoo's eyes. She drew some poison needles and took a small step forward. Once they got close, she would stab those poison needles at the main arteries in their neck. She didn't mind killing people. Especially when the enemies were these 2 hateful guys. All of a sudden. Thud! A blast of potent water elemental chi shot over and forced Sky Murong and Earth Murong to stop. Because of this sudden surge of power, Sky Murong and Earth Murong drew several steps back in unison and looked at the person who had just shown up. An awkward look appeared on Sky Murong's face. "Your lordship." Earth Murong looked sepulchral. This female went too far. She not only humiliated our mother in public but also threw her to the ground. "Your lordship, today you must bring this girl to justice and make her give our mother an acceptable explanation no matter what. Cloud Murong walked into the living room, his solemn eyes sweeping around with a steady look on his face. He had got a general idea of what had just happened in this room. We'll deal with this later. Now that second mother has already had our uncles come over, then let's figure out some other issues first, he said in a dignified voice and in a conscientious manner. But concubine Chu and Sky Murong as well as the others were all stunned when they heard his words. Second mother? What was going on? Hadn't he always been addressing her as mother? Why did he call her second mother this time? Sky Murong and Earth Murong had no idea what was going on, but concubine Chu's face suddenly darkened and an ominous premonition inexplicably rose inside her. Yunner, since you've said that we would discuss this later, then let's, third uncle, back then you once told me that my natural mother died soon after I was born, then please take a look at this old madam right in front of you. Do you know her? Before concubine Chu could finish talking, Cloud Murong pointed at Grandma Medicine and asked his third uncle. Thud. Concubine Chu's heart lurched and her face instantly became nervous. In the blink of an eye, she shot her eyes in the direction of the third uncle. Third uncle, this, however, before she could finish her sentence, with a gleam of cold light, a silver needle had been stabbed into her dumbness acupoint. When Sky Murong stretched out his hand to pull it off, Yunwoo said in an icy voice, if you want her to become a mute, then go ahead and remove that silver needle. You venomous bitch. Earth Murong glared at her, clenching his fists until they clicked. Hearing this, Yunwoo was totally indifferent. She folded her arms before her chest, a leisurely and apathetic look on her face. Knitting his eyebrows tightly together, the third uncle watched Grandma Medicine who was sitting in the host seat, and then glanced at Yunwoo who was beside her. After keeping silent for a couple of seconds, he said in a voice of senility, as if having let out a sigh, after the fire in that year, we didn't find her body, but we also have never heard of your mother since then. I didn't expect that you would come back after so many years. This remark was clearly meant for Grandma Medicine. Grandma Medicine was somewhat pensive, but she was no longer afraid, and neither did she try to evade this issue. A lot of things happened at that time. I fell off a cliff and was in a coma for several years. When I woke up, many things had changed. Short-tempered sixth uncle, who was sitting on the other side, frowned, fell off a cliff. Didn't you go missing in a fire? Why are you talking about falling off a cliff? Grandma Medicine glimpsed at concubine Chu. It's a long story. And it starts from the time when this younger sister of mine came to me to seek shelter. Hearing this, concubine Chu's face instantly went pale. She wanted to do something but could neither move nor speak. When Grandma Medicine was telling what had happened to her back then, the atmosphere in the living room was changing drastically. It actually sounded a very tired story to Yunwoo. The general plot was that the younger sister's family was in straitened circumstances, so she came to her elder sister to live with her, but in the end, the younger sister became jealous and greedy and set a fire to kill her elder sister. She tried to make that fire look like an accident, but unexpectedly, her elder sister survived. But in the end, the elder sister still ended up being pushed off a cliff by her own younger sister. Seriously injured, the elder sister was in a coma for several years. After she woke up, she found that her looks had been ruined. When she came back home, people tried to chase her away as if she was a crazy woman, but she also discovered that her own younger sister had replaced her and taken everything that used to belong to her. It was a tacky story, but this kind of thing was very common in some large families. After Grandma Medicine told her story, there was a dramatic expression on everybody's face except for Yunwoo's. Concubine Chu's face was alternating between pale and red, but she was unable to speak. She just glared at Yunwoo, eyes blazing with fury. You crazy woman, cut the nonsense. With an extremely livid and cold face, Earth Murong thundered and wanted to attack Grandma Medicine. However, before Yunwoo could make her move, the third uncle snapped coldly, enough. Your elders are here. It's not your place to talk. Third uncle, This crazy woman is not trustworthy. How can we trust her one-sided statement? Earth Murong was very angry. That's true. Since there's no evidence, her story could be a complete fabrication. Sky Murong's face was also livid. I believe her. And that will be enough. Right at this moment, Cloud Murong said in a deep voice. His remark quieted the whole living room. He believed her. Sky Murong and Earth Murong looked at him in disbelief. In their eyes, Cloud Murong had always been an elder brother and a respectable lord of the city. But today, why did he disappoint them again and again? And now he even said that he believed this unidentified old woman. She bears the exclusive symbol of our family on her shoulder, the unique mark given only to our father's legal wife. Impossible. Neither Sky Murong nor his brother believed it. But at this moment, a sly and cold look flashed across the bottom of Yunwu's eyes, and with that she waved her hand and withdrew that silver needle sticking in Concubine Chu's neck. Almost as soon as she regained her ability to speak, Concubine Chu, whose eyes had been red with anger for a long time, pounced squarely on Grandma Medicine, yelling in a shrill voice, "You bitch! I'll kill you!" Senses? Dignity? Nobility? None of them could be seen on Concubine Chu at this moment. Compared with Grandma Medicine, she seemed more like the one who was crazy. Cloud Murong's face darkened. With a swish of his figure, he instantly moved to the front of Grandma Medicine, stretched out his hand and gripped Concubine Chu's wrist. "Second mother, please conduct yourself with dignity." "Cloud Murong, I've been taking care of you for so many years, but you started calling me second mother after meeting this bitch for the first time. You ungrateful bastard, back then I should have." Concubine Chu was in an extremely excited mood and started saying words she wasn't supposed to say. Sky Murong immediately clamped his hand on Concubine Chu's mouth and stopped her. He had realized something. Whoa! Eyes reddening with anger, Concubine Chu struggled madly, trying to vent her anger. Seeing this, all elders frowned. As the mistress, this kind of behavior was so undignified. But if someone observed carefully enough, they would have noticed that something was wrong with Concubine Chu. "Your lordship, I'll take my mother away and let her have a rest." After saying this, Sky Murong took Concubine Chu and quickly left, but before leaving, he clearly took a cold sideways glance at Yunwu. "Your lordship, I'd like to take my leave, too," Earth Murong said, and then hurriedly followed his brother out of the living room. The living room finally became quiet. Yunwu sat down on the chair beside her. Her eyes were half closed and she seemed languid, sleepy, and totally unconcerned, but in fact, she was secretly performing qi circulation. She had depleted her energy and it was very likely that the beast blood that she drank yesterday had also been consumed. She had been having dull pains in those wounds all along. It seemed that she had to find a way to get some beast blood. But when she was thinking about this, Cloud Murong was declaring something in front of his elders. "Uncles, since today you're all here, let me get this straight. My mother is still alive, so she'll be living here in this mansion. And this little girl beside my mother is her adopted granddaughter, who's also my goddaughter." Seeing that Cloud Murong was so thick-skinned, Yunwu ignored him. But after Cloud Murong made that declaration, their dwelling directly switched from the guest room in the East Garden Pavilion to the West Wing, which meant that he had directly acknowledged Grandma Medicine was his natural mother. Having had her son back, Grandma Medicine was very happy, and people could see the happiness in her eyes. Since Grandma Medicine was happy about it, Yunwu didn't take any further action. As regards those subsequent miscellaneous formalities of this large family, Yunwu also didn't bother intervening. Anyway, that old fox, Cloud Murong, had his own plans, and he would surely be good to Grandma Medicine. And Yunwu knew very well what he was up to. As a result, she picked the quietest room of the West Wing and told others that she would be staying in her room for a long period to recuperate. After that, she sneaked out of the Murong mansion and headed for the forest to the west of the city. That forest belonged to the Murong family and they reared a lot of magic beasts there. Since beast blood was available at a place not far away, she naturally would go there and take it. In the suburb to the west of the city. Originally, this place had been a vast, desolate woods. The Murong family had transformed it into a private woods for rearing magic beasts, and there were many magic beasts that they had collected from various places in this woods. The Murong family never killed these magic beasts to harvest their magic cores. Instead, they had specially hired some tamers to train these magic beasts, without erasing their beast nature, to be obedient so that they could control these beasts. Just like that Tier 2 wood wolf that Yunwu had seen at the Peak Hollow. Though that wood wolf hadn't been a high-level one, it had been tamed by human, and it still had had its beast nature, which alone had strengthened its attack power to a certain degree. It was widely known that tamers didn't have high station in this world, and the reason was that though tamers were able to tame magic beasts, most tame magic beasts would lose their beast nature and thus become unthreatening magic beasts which were no different from livestock or pets. The reason why so many people wanted to become summoners was because those magic beasts covenanted to summoners still had their original beast nature and attack power, which enabled them to launch attacks more powerful than that of human. But those tame magic beasts of the Murong family's tamers possessed brutish attack power. Though they were not as powerful as magic beasts covenanted to summoners, they could still be a formidable threat to their enemies if they were in great number. Judging from this, the Murong family was definitely ambitious. And those tamers that the Murong family had hired were definitely not mediocre ones. After entering the suburb to the west of the city, Yunwu started prowling in grass, trying to stay out of other people's sight. There were high fences around the back of the suburb and all entrances were heavily guarded by the Murong family's men. Every certain distance, there was a watchtower on which a kung fu expert was on sentry duty keeping the airspace above the woods under surveillance. It was nearly impossible to flew into the woods. As a result, if common people wanted to get in, they would have to go through the entrance. But it was not difficult for Yunwu to get in even if she couldn't leap above the woods and descend from midair. She found a remote corner outside the fence and shot a length of heavenly silk. Like a ghost, her figure flashed through the fence. The moment Yunwu went in, she maneuvered between the ranges of vision of those guards on those watchtowers, heading directly for the depths of the woods. This magic beast woods was large. The deeper into it, the more luxuriant trees around her were. But she hadn't seen a single magic beast on her way deeper into the woods, which was very weird. Yunwu exerted all her spiritual power to search the area around her, trying to find a magic beast or two. But after searching for quite a while, she hadn't even found a wild rabbit, much less of a magic beast or two. What was going on? Given that the entrance of this magic beast woods of the Murong family was guarded so heavily, by no means would there be no magic beasts in this woods, unless... The moment suspicion rose inside Yunwu, a roar like that of a lion dimly came from a valley in the depths of the woods. She felt that the source of that roar was very far away. But this roar proved that Yunwu's speculation was right. There were indeed magic beasts here, but they were reared in pens. Or in another word, they were imprisoned. No matter what, she had come here for beast blood. Yunwu headed for the source of that roar. After getting through a grove and getting over a small hill, she finally arrived at a valley surrounded by 3 steep peaks. However, what she saw surprised her to some extent. Or what she saw greatly surprised her. She had thought that the Murong family's ambition was to train magic beasts, but when she saw that scene down there, a rather amazed look flashed across her purple eyes. She would be lying if she said that she was not astonished. Outside that vast valley, there was a large group of trained personnel who numbered at least hundreds. There were not just a couple of tamers but a large group of them. Lying prostrate on a hilltop in concealment, Yunwu watched the militarized training square down below and speculated that the group of people were an army. Their garments aside, between them, there seemed to be some kind of tacit agreement that only existed between servicemen. But Yunwu was a little confused. This Murong family was only the governor of a city. How did they get involved with an army? And instead of training in a military camp, this army had chosen to conduct secret training in this remote mountain. There must be something behind this. However, no matter what the reason was, Yun-woo was uninterested in speculating or finding it out. What she needed was beast blood. There must be some magic beasts imprisoned at the rear of this militarized training valley, so she decided to detour to the rear of it. She carefully scouted the area, made an assessment of the situation and then decided to stealthily take a detour around the peak of that mountain. Detouring around that steep peak proved to be much more difficult than she had imagined. Fortunately, she had received training more dangerous than climbing that steep peak in her last incarnation. After about 2 hours, Yun-woo finally managed to detour to a position above the rear of the valley. Standing on the mountain, she looked down at the whole valley. The front of the valley was a training square, but the rear of it was separated into several parts by high walls. Soldiers lived in the front. Magic beasts were imprisoned at the back. She could see that it had taken quite some time to build this base. The hills at the rear of the valley were the steepest. Maybe those magic beasts were imprisoned here so that they would not be able to flee, which was why there was no guard here. With heavenly silk, Yun-woo directly descended from the steep cliff towards the valley. The heavenly silk was long enough, so she had shot it several times before she managed to land on the ground of the valley. Roar, roar, the position Yun-woo landed was not far away from an imprisoned Tier 4 Iron Lion. Seeing this human, the Iron Lion roared repeatedly. Ring! The Iron Lion strained at the iron chains and clanked them, roaring angrily. There were several scars on the body of that Iron Lion. It revealed its hideous fangs with ferocious eyes ablaze with anger. Clearly it hadn't been tamed yet. The training had aroused its beast nature and it had gone out of control, so someone had chained its limbs. Yun-woo lifted her eyebrows and curved her lips in a cruel smile. These people had spared her a lot of trouble. With a flip of her hand, she drew a dagger and closed in on the lion step by step. Roar, roar. The Iron Lion roared angrily while straining at the iron chains more violently, as if it wanted to tear Yun-woo into pieces. However, right at the moment when Yun-woo was about to pounce on the target, sounds of measured and sure-footed tramps were heard and quickly getting closer. Captain, since the Iron Lion is roaring so loudly, it must be trying to free itself from the chains, a soldier said to the leader of the team. A dozen trained Tier V soldiers were marching towards the back of the valley in a column. Keep your eyes peeled. We can't afford to let any accidents happen in the next few days, the captain said solemnly with a cold look. More than 10 soldiers answered in unison, yes, sir. Their voice displayed the tacit agreement between them and their consciousness of obeying orders. The biggest difference between soldiers and guards was that there was better tacit teamwork among soldiers. The combat effectiveness of an army was not loose but cohesive. Once someone engaged an army, this person would be besieged and the enemies would never stop coming, unless this person was capable of wiping out the whole army. Yun-woo had no intention to engage this army. Otherwise, it might be rather difficult for her to retreat unharmed, so she flashed into a passage nearby and hid herself before those people arrived. But after entering that passage, she found that she seemed to have intruded into the territory of some other magic beasts. When Yun-woo walked out of that passage and saw those flying beasts locked in iron cages, a wave of amazement rose inside her. Those flying beasts were exceptionally calm. When they saw her, they merely raised their eyes and looked at her without any other reaction. Apparently they had been tamed, but she could still see their beast nature in their eyes, so it could be seen that these flying beasts had retained their beast nature though they had been tamed. What was going on? Yun-woo didn't know, but she must get some beast blood as soon as possible. But what Yun-woo didn't know was that from the moment she walked into this area, someone had been watching her all along with a pair of black eyes. And the reason why these magic beasts had been so quiet was because that person had been controlling them. After walking around this area, Yun-woo became even more surprised. There were far more tame magic beasts than she had imagined, and a lot of them were at Tier 4. Once these magic beasts were sent to a battleground, their combat effectiveness would be immeasurable. Astonished as she was, Yunwoo had finally found a suitable target, a snow leopard in peak stage of Tier 4. It was separately imprisoned in a corner, chained as well. Given her current physical condition, she should save energy whenever she could. But when she was about to make her move, a cold look suddenly flashed across her purple eyes and she shot some silver needles towards a target behind her. With a swish of her figure, she stabbed a dagger at the person who was hiding in concealment. The man hiding in the dark sidestepped in a weird manner and quickly dodged her strike. Right at this moment, with a gleam of cold light, the edge of a sword was pressed against Yunwoo's neck, and the tip of Yunwoo's dagger was also against his chest where the heart was. The circumstance was exactly the same as the one in the forest that day. There was a ghost of a smile on Zhou Feiyu's solemn face. He lowered his head and watched this little woman before him, a distinctly amused look in his eyes. "We met again. This time you came to me yourself." Seeing Zhou Feiyu, Yunwoo frowned and recollected that he had been the man she had met in the forest. "It's you." Since this man appeared in this place, he should be a member of that army. But how had he discovered her? "The way we met each other was always so special, which made my impression of you deeper and deeper." Zhou Feiyu watched her and mumbled in a deep voice. He sounded as if he was intimately speaking honeyed words to his woman. Yunwoo knitted her eyebrows tightly together, an icy look in her eyes. With a twitch of her hand, she pushed the sword on her shoulder away and swished a few steps away from this man. "Don't be nervous. I bear you no malice. Otherwise, I wouldn't have cleared this area for you and let you walk around freely, without any other movements." Zhou Feiyu just stood where he was and said. He maintained a noble smile on his solemn face. Cleared this area for her? Was he saying that he had helped her? Yunwoo looked in the direction of that noble, solemn man, apathetically sizing him up. Today he was still clothed in a black robe with a pattern of a python. Judging from his sumptuous attire, it was very likely that he had a fairly high military rank. However, while she was peering at him, Zhou Feiyu slightly raised his hand and made a hand gesture at no specific target. Before long, a soldier carrying a box walked out of a passage in the corner. After respectfully bowed down to Zhou Feiyu, the soldier handed the box over to him. The soldier didn't say anything. Zhou Feiyu took the box and waved his hand to have the soldier left. After that soldier took his leave, the place returned to its previous quietness, but Yunwoo's look became colder, vigilance secretly rising in her. It turned out that she had been spied on all along. Didn't it mean that this man had seen everything she had done? And he had been waiting for her to jump into the trap. And yet she hadn't known about it? Damn it. You're so nervous, which is totally not like you. Are you by any chance afraid that I'm going to eat you? Zhou Feiyu watched Yunwoo and a smile appeared on his solemn face. Yunwoo's facial expression didn't change much but the look in her eyes went cold. You knew about my intrusion? Then why did you let me in? Zhou Feiyu lifted his eyebrows and watched her in amusement. Little woman, I should be the one who asked this question. You sneaked into my turf. Hearing this, Yunwoo curved her lips and talked back in a voice just as tough as his, your turf. As far as I know, this magic beast's woods belongs to the Murong family. Since when did it become yours? No matter whose turf this place actually was, nominally it belonged to the Murong family. The reason for this was because someone wanted to make sure that the secret in this magic beast woods stayed secret from outsiders. Now that an outsider like her had discovered such a big secret, she would surely be eliminated. However, this man seemed to have no such intention. She couldn't guess what he was thinking, but he was definitely up to something. Yunwoo's words made Zhou Feiyu's smile slightly freeze, but his mood didn't seem to have changed much. Without answering her, he took a bowl of beast blood out of the box in his hand, which was still giving off a strong smell of blood. A lot of effort has gone into rearing these magic beasts, and it would be a pity if any one of them got killed by you. I've already had the beast blood you need prepared. Rest assured. It's the blood of a tier V beast, which should be able to meet your needs. Saying this, Zhou Feiyu handed the beast blood to her. On that day, he saw that she killed a magic beast to drink its blood. He had been keeping that in mind. Though unaware of the details, he had told why she had come here, so he had had someone prepare some beast blood. Watching Zhou Feiyu, Yunwu glanced at the beast blood in front of her and slightly curved her lips. Why are you doing this? A meaningful look flashed across Zhou Feiyu's deep eyes and he stared squarely at her. Isn't it obvious? I'm fawning on you. Fawning on her? Hearing this answer, Yunwu raised her eyebrows, but privately she found him ridiculous. This man's actually pretty interesting. He let me in just so he could give me some beast blood to fawn on me. If you're suspicious of this bowl of beast blood, I can take you somewhere to get some blood yourself. What do you say? Zhou Feiyu watched her and said with a bland smile, as if he was amused to see her vigilant look. Frowning, Yunwu peered at him for a while, a half-smile on her face. Lead the way. Zhou Feiyu slightly curved his lips and took a deep look at her. Then he turned around and walked towards the passage. Yunwu followed him at a moderate pace. No matter what the intent of this man was, now that she was in here, she couldn't leave empty-handed. Since he himself had said that he would take her to get beast blood, she'd like to find out what silly games he was playing. After going through that passage, they arrived at a corridor. There were cages on both sides of it. The magic beasts in those cages were all high-level ones, some of which had already been tamed. Seeing human beings walking by, those beasts roared angrily. Magic beasts without intelligence were just like common beasts, but once they became intelligent, then the success rate of taming them would be extremely low. Even common beasts were unwilling to yield to human, let alone intelligent magic beasts. As a result, every magic beast they passed roared at them. But Yunwu paid extra attention to those magic beasts and discovered that the highest level of them was peak stage of Tier 4. She didn't see any Tier V magic beasts. Finally, at the end of the corridor, Zhou Feiyu stopped in front of a cell with 3 walls. At this moment, she also saw that 4 soldiers had been waiting at the side. When they saw Zhou Feiyu, they all bowed to him respectfully but didn't say anything. Clearly he didn't want Yunwu to know his identity. All of a sudden, a pained roar mixed with some kind of deep groan came. Zhou Feiyu turned his head aside, gave a glimpse at that cage and asked in a cold, deep voice, "How's it going?" "It's been 4 hours, but the cub still hasn't been delivered yet. The roar of the male leopard has a stimulative effect on the female one, but the male leopard is exhausted," a medic reported to Zhou Feiyu respectfully. Yunwu walked forward and saw what was going on in that cell. The area of the cell was over 20 square meters, but at this moment, it was filled with smell of blood. A crimson leopard restrained by giant iron manacles was lying prostrate on the ground, blood all over its body. It stared squarely at Yunwu and the others, who were standing outside the cell, with its ferocious eyes, letting out deep, weak growls. Though it was covered in blood, it still looked fierce and aggressive. Not far away behind, there was a magenta leopard, the belly of which was round. The lower part of its body was bloody. It was also lying prostrate on the ground, deep and pained roars issuing from its mouth. It was giving birth to a cub. Seeing this scene, Yunwu couldn't help slightly raising her eyebrows. But judging from how that female leopard looked, the birth-giving process didn't seem to be going very well. Zhou Feiyu glimpsed at the male leopard and said callously, "Go get another bowl of blood from the male leopard." Hearing this, the medic was clearly stunned. In a somewhat hesitant, low voice, he said, "The male leopard is already too weak. If we take blood from it once again, it might." However, before the medic could finish his sentence, Zhou Feiyu's icy eyes darted to him. "Are you questioning my order?" "I don't dare." A cold shiver of fear ran through the medic, who immediately lowered his head and knelt down to the ground on his knees. Zhou Feiyu gave him a cold sideways glance. Then he twisted his head aside and glanced at the 4 soldiers on the side. "Move." "Yes." Carrying tools serving the purpose of keeping magic beasts under control, the 4 soldiers opened the door of the cell and walked towards that crimson leopard. Roar, roar! The moment the 4 soldiers went inside, the crimson leopard growled at them and struggled to its feet, arching its back in an offensive stance. But it was manacled, exhausted and covered in wounds. And the 4 soldiers were veterans. Keeping a fairly long distance from the crimson leopard, they pressed its neck and limbs against the ground with long tongs. The crimson leopard was in a bad condition, so it was soon immobilized, growling repeatedly. Roar, roar! Seeing what the male leopard was going through, the female leopard roared. There was anger and despair in the roar. It tried to stand up but fell to the ground several times, its lower body bleeding continuously. Roar! The roar sounded furious, unreconciled and desperate. Seeing this, Yunwu slightly frowned. The look in Zhou Feiyu's eyes were completely cold and no signs of other emotions could be seen on his face. He noticed that Yunwu was frowning and with that a smile appeared on his solemn face. What's wrong? Are you pitying it? Pitying it? In this world where the strong preyed on the weak, sympathy was redundant. Besides, she had come here with intent to kill magic beasts to get their blood. But what was happening in the cell made Yunwu somewhat uncomfortable. Soon, the 4 soldiers got a bowl of blood. The male leopard was lying on the ground, breathing weakly, but it was still staring at them with an extremely angry look in its ferocious eyes, as if it was trying to protect the female leopard behind it. Drink it. You've seen it with your own eyes, so there's no need for you to suspect that I've put something into it. Zhou Feiyu looked at Yunwu and said with a bland smile. At Zhou Feiyu's signal, those soldiers, who were carrying the bowl of blood, walked up to Yunwu and handed the bowl to her. Watching the blood in the bowl, Yunwu raised her head and darted a cold glance at Zhou Feiyu, but there was no gratitude in her eyes. Instead, her look was somewhat cold. This man was definitely someone who would do anything to get what he wanted. But Yunwu still stretched out her hand, took the bowl and gulped the blood down in front of all these people. The smile on Zhou Feiyu's face grew bigger when he saw this. After drinking the blood, Yunwu didn't return the bowl to that soldier but casually tossed it aside. Ignoring the look on Zhou Feiyu's face, Yunwu slowly walked past that soldier and went inside the cell. Girl, it's dangerous. A soldier at the doorway hurriedly tried to stop her. Yunwu darted an icy glance at him with her purple eyes and he was stunned. When he collected himself, she was already in the cell. Roar. The male leopard's eyes reddened with anger and it tried to stand up. With her back to those people outside the cell, Yunwu crouched in front of the male leopard and looked it in the eyes, her purple eyes shimmering with a faint purple light. Easy. I've come here to help you. Since I drank your blood, you may think of this as me returning the favor. She didn't know whether it could understand her or not, but surprisingly, with the hypnotic effect of Yunwu's soul chain technique, the male leopard, which had been struggling to stand up, gradually relaxed. It stared at Yunwu and the look in its eyes switched from angry to vigilant, to suspicious, and eventually the leopard uttered a low groan. Relax. Have a good sleep. Everything will be done when you wake up. Yunwu stretched out her hand and slowly stroked the leopard's head, saying in a gentle voice. When Yunwu touched it, the male leopard growled, but after that, it relaxed. Slowly, it closed its eyes, as if it had been hypnotized. Outside the cell, Zhou Feiyu, the medic and those soldiers were all surprised by this scene. What was going on? That was a Tier V blaze leopard. It had been more than a year and a half since this leopard was shipped here. It had been through numerous training sessions but still hadn't been tamed due to its daunting ferocity. Even at this moment when it was feeble, it still refused to let humans get close to it. But why was this happening? Was it really too feeble? Roar, the female leopard roared. Unexpectedly, seeing that the male leopard didn't react, it managed to gather some strength, picked itself up and pounced on Yunwu. Zhou Feiyu, who was outside the cell, frowned and meant to take action. But the next second, he was transfixed by what he saw. His eyebrows lifted and surprise gleamed in his eyes. Those soldiers also watched the scene in the cell, amazed. The female leopard had barely approached Yunwu when it suddenly stopped and then slowly lay prostrate on the ground in a seemingly obedient manner, letting Yunwu do whatever she wanted. Yunwu tore a strip of cloth off her clothes, blindfolded the female leopard and then used silver needles to anesthetize the lower body of it. She took out a dagger and opened the womb tract for the female leopard. By performing womb pressing technique, she successfully helped the female leopard give birth to leopard cubs through natural labor. It took her almost an hour to get this done. Though Yunwu had medical skills, she had never delivered a baby before. But today she had delivered baby leopards, which was her first time. 2 leopard cubs were born. One of them was bright red and the other purple. Both of them were double the size of a palm. And then Yunwu stitched up the opened womb tract, applied some medicine powder, which she had made by herself to her own secret formula, to the wound, removed the strip from the female leopard's eyes and pulled out those silver needles sticking in its acupoints. Roar! The moment its acupoints were unblocked, the female leopard felt a sharp pain and roared. This roar woke up the male leopard which had been lying at the side. Roar! Roar! The 2 leopards roared repeatedly. After sleeping for an hour, the male leopard seemed to have regained much of its strength and it stood up. Roar! It roared squarely at Yunwu. Standing at the side, Yunwu was neither flustered nor scared at all. She just quietly stood where she was and looked down at that male leopard. She didn't know whether it was because of what she had done for the female leopard or not, but despite the fact that the male leopard was growling with its hideous fangs revealed, it didn't launch an attack on Yunwu right away, which was very surprising. All of a sudden, howl! The cub's howl was heard. The 2 leopard cubs, the eyes of which were still closed, let out a howl and then instinctively craned to the female leopard's breasts. The female leopard stopped roaring, lowered its head and looked at the blood-stained leopard cubs. There seemed to be a tender look in its eyes. It uttered a low groan, stuck its tongue out and started licking the cubs. Maybe motherhood transcended species. No matter it was a magic beast or a human. I've returned the favor. From now on, you're on your own, said Yunwu, irrespective of whether they could understand or not. And then she walked out of the cell. Roar! The male leopard roared, but unlike those previous ones, it was not an angry roar. What was going on? Nobody could understand. But that medic was transfixed with shock. The way that she had delivered the leopard cubs had greatly astounded him. How exactly did she manage to do that? Those soldiers were also dumbfounded. She was just a teenage girl, yet she had managed to walk around 2 Tier V magic beasts and also deliver magic beast cubs. How was this possible? Zhou Feiyu watched Yunwu walking out of the cell, his black eyes so deep that nobody knew what he was thinking. Where can I find water? Yunwu gave a glimpse at the soldier standing at the side and asked. Her hands were covered in blood, which was giving off a strong smell. Though she drank beast blood, that was because she had to. At this moment, she was not in the mood for smelling this disgusting odor of blood. Hearing this, the soldier did a double take and then hurriedly glanced at Zhou Feiyu. Zhou Feiyu nodded and the soldier took Yunwu to wash her hands. After Yunwu left, the medic, who was still kneeling on the ground, asked Zhou Feiyu respectfully, Your Highness, since these leopard cubs have been delivered, should I take them out of cell and rear them separately or? Zhou Feiyu gave a cold glance at the leopards in the cell and said in an icy voice, Stick to the original plan. Do it quiet. Yes. After Yunwu washed her hands, the soldier didn't lead Yunwu to the cell but brought her to an elegant room. It was a room of unconventional decoration, full of rich and premium furnishings. Given that this was a training base in an out-of-the-way mountainous area, the identity of the people who lived in such an elegant room must be really special. Miss, please have a rest here. I'll go prepare a dinner for you, the soldier said and then left the room. It was gradually dark outside. Vaguely, she heard the roars of some magic beasts returning to their dens as well as the slogans shouted by the army coming back to the camp. After that soldier took his leave, Yunwoo's eyes swept around the room, and with that, at a gentle pace, she walked into the study at the back of this elegant room. The bookshelf in it was loaded with books. Writing brushes, ink sticks, ink slabs and paper were all available. It seemed that this Zhou Feiyu was a man adept in both the pen and the sword. But all of a sudden, Yunwoo saw a painting on the desk out of the corner of her eye and was slightly stunned when she caught sight of what the painting presented. "What do you think? Did I do a good job?" Suddenly a solemn voice tinged with amusement came from outside the study. She turned her head back and saw that Zhou Feiyu in black walked inside. Lips slightly curved, he was looking at her, a faint light glimmering in his black eyes. Any woman would involuntarily be attracted to such a handsome man. However, after giving a glimpse at him, Yunwoo withdrew her eyes. On the table was a portrait of her, which was of classical style. In terms of characterization, the portrait bore a striking resemblance to her. She must admit that this man's painting skills were pretty good, since he managed to draw such a good likeness of her with merely painting brushes. "You seem to have violated my portraiture right," Yunwoo said in a deep voice. However, Zhou Feiyu was stunned after hearing this remark. He didn't quite understand what she meant. Irrespective of whether he understood her or not, Yunwoo stretched out her hand and took that portrait, which was then abruptly set afire. Zhou Feiyu knitted his eyebrows together. "You." But then he just watched the flame in her hand and the absent-mindedness on her face, a look of amusement flashing across the bottom of his eyes. "It seems that you little woman never cease to surprise me." After the portrait was burnt to ashes, the flame disappeared. Then Yunwoo turned her head aside, gave a glance at him and curved her lips in a grim smile. "Speaking of surprises, is there anything more surprising than your identity? The 7th prince of Zhou dynasty." Zhou Feiyu's surname was Zhou. He had a remarkably high status in this army and also managed to reach tier 7 at such a young age. Originally, Yunwoo had been merely speculating. It was not until she saw the stamp on the painting that she became certain about it. As far as she could remember, among all those princes of the Zhou dynasty, there was a prince regent who was the youngest and well known to every household. He fought valiantly on the battlefield at the age of 12 and did a lot of impressive wartime exploits. When he was 15, the title of the prince regent was conferred on him, which was a rare exception. In most people's sight, he was second only to the emperor. However, the 7th prince's mother came from a humble family background, which was why he was not allowed to participate in imperial court affairs, though he bore the title of the prince regent. He was appointed supreme commander of the 3 armies stationed on the border and was supposed to assist the crown prince in succeeding to the throne in the future. After that, the 7th prince had been staying on the border area and never came back to the royal palace. Although this Luo city was not a border city, there were only 3 cities between it and the border. So it was not absolutely impossible that this man was that legendary 7th prince. The bland smile on Zhou Feiyu's well-featured face was replaced by coldness when he heard Yunwoo's words, and a ferocious look flashed across the bottom of his eyes. Yunwoo naturally saw it, but she pretended otherwise. She walked past him to the table in the living room, sat down, poured a cup of tea and slowly took a sip of it. "If you want to kill me to keep your secret safe, you should do it now, because if you don't, you might not have another chance." He was probably the one who built this secret domestication base. And his purpose was very obvious. Power, the throne, ambition, these things were always related to royal members. If the existence of this secret domestication base was disclosed to outsiders, there would be dire consequences. Zhou Feiyu took a deep look at Yunwoo with his black eyes, peering at her. The thought of killing her had indeed crossed his mind, but after quite a while, a smile appeared on Zhou Feiyu's solemn face. "If you were someone else, I would surely have killed you. But sooner or later, you'll be my woman." There was assertiveness in his domineering tone. This tone was always so unpleasant. Yunwoo's eyebrows furrowed. "These are some quite big words." With a solemn smile, Zhou Feiyu said, "I took a fancy to you. No women I took fancy to run away from me. If these words were said to her by someone she liked, they would have made a pretty good love confession. But clearly, Yunwoo was sneering at his conceited and unduly positive tone. She slightly curved her lips in a faint smile. Is that so? We'll see. Snap. At this moment, a knock on the door was heard. The door was not closed, but seeing that Zhou Feiyu was in the room, the soldier who was carrying a lunchbox still knocked. Zhou Feiyu signaled him to come in. The soldier quickly placed the bowls and dishes on the table and then hurriedly left. Zhou Feiyu took a bowl of rice and passed it to Yunwoo. Have some. It's already dark. I'll get you out of here tomorrow if you want to leave. Yunwoo glanced at him and took the bowl, but then she returned it to him, leaned over and took another bowl of rice from the table. This suggested that she was very suspicious of him. Zhou Feiyu was very embarrassed. But he giggled, "Little woman, you seem to be very suspicious of me." Yunwoo raised her purple eyes and coldly looked at him. "Do you think I have any reason to be unsuspicious of you? And my name is Phoenix Wu. If you still want to enjoy this meal, you'll have to stop calling me that disgusting name. Little woman." Yunwoo felt that this form of address was really disgusting. After what she did in the Murong family, he would know the name, Phoenix Wu, sooner or later anyway. Phoenix Wu. Zhou Feiyu raised his eyebrows and looked at her. Your surname is Wu. Are you a member of the Wu family? The Wu family? What was that? Yunwoo was stunned for a second, ignoring him. She didn't care whether he misunderstood or not. After the issue of the Murong family was dealt with, she would return to the capital city under the name Yunwoo. And before that, she hoped that that man would be able to find her after hearing about the scene she had made. Part of the reason why she had made such a scene in the Murong family was indeed because she hoped that that missing man would be able to hear about it and find her. That torrent had numerous branches which stretched out all over the three kingdoms, and she had no idea where the river had taken him. Since she didn't have a clue where to find him, she might as well let him come to her. Seeing that Yunwoo remained silent, Zhou Feiyu believed that his guess was right. In Longshu Kingdom, near the border. The Dragon Brook town was located in the Longshu Kingdom near the Magic Beasts Forest. Similar to the Dragon Town in the Zhou Kingdom, this town was in a out-of-the-way area but very busy, with an excited coming and going of people. In a luxurious mansion in this town, a tall figure slowly stood up in a medicated bath pool. His body was strong with skin firm and whiter than that of women, but red marks could be vaguely seen. Those marks seemed to be left by newly healed wounds. Master, I brought you your clothes. At this moment, a tender female voice came from the doorway. A coquettish woman carrying a suit of white clothes walked inside. The man, who had just finished the bath, knitted his pretty eyebrows. A gust of wind blew over and the curtain drooped. Put down the clothes and leave. His voice was cold, deep and emotionless. The woman instantly stopped and watched the man behind the curtain, disappointment gleaming in her charming eyes. But soon, a smile appeared on her beautiful face and she said in a tender voice, Master, your wounds have just healed. Please let Ruoling serve you. However, before she could take a step forward, that cold voice was heard again, Lingqi. With that, a black figure came out of nowhere in a flash. She was wearing a black mask and black clothes, revealing only her icy, ruthless eyes which were on Ruoling. Miss Ruo, you know what kind of man Master is very well. Please give me the clothes and leave. After saying this in a solemn voice, Lingqi took the clothes from Ruoling's hands. Watching Lingqi in a black mask, Ruoling knitted her willow leaf-shaped eyebrows together and gave a glance at the curtain. Eventually, she still didn't dare to disobey. Somewhat reluctantly, she took her leave. The door was closed. Then Lingqi sent the clothes into the room, reporting. Master, I've got some news of the person you asked me to find. Keep talking. I just got a message saying that a teenage girl made a scene in the Murong mansion in Luo City of the Zhou Kingdom, but this message is not confirmed yet. I've already had someone go non-stop to the Zhou Kingdom. The curtain was raised. A man in white languidly walked out. That's not necessary. I'll go there myself. At night. After everything was done, Zhou Feiyu headed for the guest room. 2 guards were standing not far away from the door of the guest room. Yunwu was accommodated. On the sight of Zhou Feiyu, they bowed in unison. The lamp was still ablaze in the room. Under the candlelight, a figure could be seen sitting in front of the table. As a result, the 2 guards had been standing there unworried. In an undertone, Zhou Feiyu said to the guard behind him, "Leave, all of you." "Yes." After hearing his order, the guard who had been following him as well as the 2 guards near the doorway took their leave. Snap! Zhou Feiyu knocked at the door. But after quite a while, there was still no response. "Miss Wu," he called. Finally, Zhou Feiyu realized that something was wrong. Without any noticeable movements, he exerted a force on the door, which was then instantly opened, as if someone smashed it open. Zhou Feiyu walked inside and looked around, but nobody was in. Beside the candle, there was an erect paper model, the shadow of which was projected onto the window by the candlelight, bringing about a semblance of someone sitting beside the table. Zhou Feiyu grabbed that paper model. The look on his face was somewhat cold, but at the same time, an intense desire to catch her rose in him. "Phoenix Wu. You think you can run away from me?" With a grip, the paper folding model was instantly crumpled into a ball. There was callousness tinged with sternness in his deep voice. Under the cover of night, a phantom figure retraced the previous route and soundlessly left this magic beast woods. While it was still dark, she quickly returned to the west wing. The next day, Yunwu changed her clothes and leisurely walked out of the room. She had just walked a short distance when she saw 2 handmaids coming towards her carrying a basin and some other things. "Good morning, lady. Let us help you wash your face and comb your hair." Seeing Yunwu, the 2 handmaids said respectfully. Yunwu didn't know that not long after she left yesterday, Cloud Murong had publicly declared her natural mother's returning as well as the existence of his goddaughter. It was very likely that all residents of the Luo city knew it now. In merely 2 days, her identity directly ascended from a fledgling little girl, who made a scene in the Murong mansion, to a lady of the Murong family, which was very dramatic. However, this dramatic change drew members of the Ouyang family of the Water City, and they seemed very nervous. Early this morning, they arrived at the Murong mansion. At this moment, in the living room of the Murong mansion, sitting on the host seat, Cloud Murong looked at Ouyang Qing and Ouyang Ku, who were sitting on the 2 sides. "Second Patriarch Ouyang, you came here so early. Are you here to send your congratulations after hearing the good news of our family?" Ouyang Qing smiled mildly. "We did come here to congratulate Lord Murong, but apart from that, there's an issue we'd like to confirm." A faint smile appeared on Cloud Murong's poised face and he said in a deep voice, "May I ask whether this issue Second Patriarch Ouyang just talked about has anything to do with Murong family?" At this moment, Ouyang Ku said, "Lord Murong, we'd like to meet the girl who came here yesterday, who's also your goddaughter." A solemn look flashed across the bottom of Cloud Murong's eyes when he heard Ouyang Ku's words. In a deep voice, he said, "Surely you'll see her, but not now. My goddaughter has been in a closed-door cultivation, so I'm afraid you'll have to wait a few days." Second Patriarch Ouyang. In fact, Cloud Murong had a shrewd idea why members of the Ouyang family had come here. "Aren't you trying to drive your guests away, Lord Murong?" There was still a mild smile on Ouyang Qing's face, but his voice went somewhat deep. Even if he was trying to drive them away, did they dare to play hardball on the Murong family's turf? Besides, as the lord of the city, Cloud Murong's attitude could be deemed very polite. Cloud Murong didn't reply but glanced at the steward who was standing at the side. The steward immediately walked forward and said fairly respectfully, "Second Patriarch Ouyang, young Master Ouyang, please return." Slightly frowning, Ouyang was a little annoyed. He was just about to say something when Ouyang Qing raised his hand and stopped him. Now that Lord Murong put it this way, it seems that we don't deserve the honor. We'll take our leave right now. Upon these words, Ouyang Qing cupped his hands before his chest as a gesture of farewell and then left with Ouyang. Second uncle, judging by Cloud Murong's attitude, that girl is no doubt the one we met in the Magic Beasts forest. Maybe Cloud Murong didn't let us see her because he placed her under house arrest trying to get her vigor grass, Ouyang said in a cold voice the moment they walked out of the Murong mansion. Ouyang Qing's mild face also became rather cold. No matter whether she's under house arrest or not, we can't let them get the vigor grass. What should we do? We go back first and then let his lordship himself lead his men here to demand that girl's release. The reason why they came here was because they wanted to find out whether that girl was the one they had met in the Magic Beasts forest. Though not having seen her, they believed that the answer was probably positive. It was just that they didn't bring enough men here, so it was definitely not a wise choice to go to the opposing side's turf demanding that they hand over that girl. In the West Wing, with several handmaids serving her and following her around, Yunwu felt very uncomfortable. Grandma Medicine also felt the same way, so she asked them to stay in the outer courtyard of the West Wing, telling them she would call them if she needed anything. After changing the dressings for Grandma Medicine, Yunwu went to Little Leaf's room. She checked the wounds and refreshed the bandage. Watching all those wounds on Little Leaf's thin body, Grandma Medicine felt very distressed. She suffered so much. Don't worry, Granny. Her condition has stabilized. Today she'll wake up, and then after half a month or so, she'll fully recover. Hearing Yunwu's words, Grandma Medicine was relieved. However, it seemed as if the pensiveness on her face would never dissolve. Seeing this, Yunwu had a shrewd what the reason was. But she pretended that she didn't know, asking, "Granny, you seem to be preoccupied. What's wrong?" Watching her with a tender and protective look in her eyes, Grandma Medicine shook her head and smiled, "Nothing. Maybe it's because I've just come back and haven't accustomed myself to this new home." Last night, Cloud Murong took her to Wilderness Murong. Though old, Grandma Medicine was not stupid. She knew that he wanted her to persuade Yunwu into treating Wilderness Murong. One of them was her husband, and the other was her son. She cared much about them. But she couldn't take advantage of this girl, especially when this girl had already done so many things for her. How could she ask her to do more? The bond between people should be purely sincere. If one side tried to use the other, the bond would deteriorate. Hearing this, Yunwu smiled but didn't bring it out into the open. "You've been away for decades. It's very normal that you feel unused to it, but gradually you'll get used to it." Grandma Medicine nodded and moved her eyes to Little Leaf who was lying in bed. Watching Grandma Medicine, Yunwu found that she seemed to have no other words to say. As a matter of fact, Yunwu was touched that Grandma Medicine didn't bring up Wilderness Murong's issue. At least, Granny didn't try to use her by making immoral requests. 10 days later. During these days, Yunwu were either in Little Leaf's room checking her wounds or staying in her own room cultivating internal qi. She refused to meet any members of the Murong family. It was said that Wilderness Murong's condition had been stable over the past 10 days. Cloud Murong had revamped the Murong mansion. Grandma Medicine and concubine Chu lived in the West Wing and the East Wing respectively. Sky Murong's mansion had been burnt, so his family had moved back to the Murong mansion, living near the East Wing. To support her natural mother, Earth Murong had also moved back from his own offshoot mansion. As a result, the East Wing became overcrowded. Cloud Murong had no choice but to have Snow Murong move to the West Wing, sparing some room for people living in the East Wing. Snow Murong, who was still recovering from her broken legs, kept making noises every day, abusing Grandma Medicine with malicious curses. Her voice was so loud that even Yunwu, who lived in a room in the corner, could hear it now and then. It was also said that the Ouyang family of the Water City had visited the Murong mansion frequently during the past 10 days, and that even the Lord of Water City came. As regards the reason, they still came here for her. But Cloud Murong made some plans in advance and he managed to have members of the Ouyang family leave every time they came. In fact, Yunwoo hadn't always stayed in the West Wing during the past 10 days. She sneaked out several times, so she heard all those rumors which had spread through the whole city, irrespective of whether she wanted to hear them or not. But she didn't go to that forest in the suburb to hunt magic beasts. She had found a better way. When she needed beast blood, she directly went to the street where there were magic beasts on sale to order blood. Though the level of the beast blood was tier 2 at the highest, she could get it in less than a day. Something was better than nothing. Beast blood was no longer a problem for the moment, but she wasn't relieved. Because she had been waiting for 10 days, but that man had never come. She didn't know whether it was because the scene she had made was not big enough, or because the river had taken that man to an out-of-the-way place where he couldn't hear any messages from the outside world. It had been more than a month since she left the Imperial City. She couldn't just keep waiting like this. One day, early in the morning, it seemed as if something important was going to happen in the Murong mansion. People were bustling around everywhere. As usual, Yunwoo first went to Little Leaf's room. After 10 days, most of her wounds healed. She wanted to check her fingers. However, she had just walked into the hall when a handmaid was knocked down by her. "Lady, so sorry. Are you okay?" Sitting on the ground, the handmaid hurriedly picked up those small bottles, put them back onto the tray, picked herself up and asked Yunwoo nervously. Yunwoo glanced at those bottles on the tray and found that those were drugs that she prepared for Little Leaf and Grandma Medicine. "Where are you taking these drugs?" Yunwoo slightly furrowed her brow and looked at that handmaid. The handmaid was a little anxious but still answered respectfully, "The venerable master's very ill and there are not enough drugs, so the venerable mistress asked me to come here and get these." The venerable mistress was what servants of the Murong family called Grandma Medicine. Hearing this, Yunwoo raised her eyebrows. "Very ill? Wilderness Murong had a relapse?" During the past 10 days, Yunwoo claimed that she was in a closed-door cultivation, but that day, when nobody was around, she quietly went to see Wilderness Murong. There was no wounds on him, and his chi was normal, but he was in a trance and his whole body was swollen. So far nobody had been able to make an accurate diagnosis. Actually, she didn't know what kind of disease it was either. But judging from his pulse, he should be fine for the moment. Yet today, his condition exacerbated. Seeing that the handmaid appeared very anxious, Yunwoo didn't hold her up. She waved her hand and let her leave. Then Yunwoo walked into the quiet living room and headed for Little Leaf's room. To her surprise, Little Leaf wasn't in either. Those wounds on her body had almost healed, but full recovery from her injured fingers would take longer time. Where did she go under this circumstance? Where the hell is everybody? Someone come here. Come here to serve your master. At this moment, an angry, loud voice emanated from a nearby room. That was nobody else but Snow Murong. Ever since she moved here, she had always been angry and discontented, especially after she heard that her father had not only found a mother but also adopted a daughter. She was exceptionally displeased with this. An old countrywoman became her grandmother, and that hateful girl who broke her legs became her younger sister. How was she supposed to face residents of the Luo city after all this? And how was she supposed to live with such an unbearable humiliation? She couldn't just swallow all this. As a result, she yelled and swore every day to make everybody suffer. However, for some reason, today she had got up and waited for quite a while, but nobody came in to serve her. Was this that so-called grandmother trying to deal her a head-on blow at the first encounter? The more she thought about it, the more annoyed she got. "What's wrong, my lady? You started practicing singing so early?" Suddenly, the door was pushed open and a seemingly jeering, languid voice came. She saw that Yunwoo in purple walked inside through the door at a gentle pace. Recently, Snow Murong had been yelling angrily every day. Clearly she did this on purpose. After Snow Murong saw who just came in, her pupils contracted, her eyes ablaze with anger. It's you. You shameless woman have such a thick skin. How dare you come into my sight? A smile appeared on Yunwoo's beautiful face when she heard this. She was in a good mood. Why should I be afraid of coming here? Because your thick-skinned father insisted on adopting me? Speaking of which, I think it's members of the Murong family who are shameless and who should be too embarrassed to be seen by others. Yunwoo believed that the reason why Cloud Murong wanted her to be his goddaughter was more because he wanted to co-opt her than because of her medical skills. Just like back in the Magic Beasts forest, both Sky Murong and Ouyang Qing tried to co-opt her when they saw her strength, but this Cloud Murong was somewhat smarter, since he knew how to take advantage of his relation with Grandma Medicine. Snow Murong became furious after hearing Yunwoo's remarks, and it seemed as if flames were about to spurt out of her eyes. Bullshit. Who do you think you are? Didn't you already know who I am? You father's goddaughter. Yunwoo said in a contemptuous and sarcastic tone, elegantly sat down on a chair beside her, leisurely poured herself a cup of tea and took a sip. Snow Murong clenched her teeth until they were about to break. You think you deserve to be my father's goddaughter? Pooh. Let me tell you something. You'd better get out of the Murong mansion right now. Otherwise, you'll regret not having left earlier when I recover. Before blustering, this Snow Murong seemed to have already forgotten what happened in the offshoot mansion of the Murong family not long ago. She was exactly the kind of person that people described with the saying, once on shore, one prays no more. The smile on the corner of Yunwoo's lips stayed unchanged when she heard Snow Murong's bluster. She gave a glance at Snow Murong's legs out of the corner of her eye. If you're going to cause me so much trouble, maybe I should kill you right now since there's nobody around. Shouldn't I? Or should I do something to make sure you'll never recover from your broken legs? Hearing her words, Snow Murong, whose face was full of anger, abruptly felt a cold shiver of fear run through her, vigilance rising in her. What are you going to do? For your information, this is the Murong mansion. All people will come to my help if I yell. Really? Yunwoo lifted her eyebrows, a seemingly curious look on her beautiful face. But on my way here, I saw that there was not a single person in the whole West Wing. Do you think your scream will be loud enough to be heard by people outside the West Wing? Upon these words, Yunwoo put down the teacup, stood up and slowly walked towards Snow Murong. Snow Murong watched Yunwoo approaching her, anger in her eyes, but for some reason, horror uncontrollably flooded her in waves. You! Someone help! She started yelling. Yunwoo paused, as if waiting for her to call someone here. However, Snow Murong kept yelling for quite a while but nobody came. Are you done yelling? Then I'm going to do it, Yunwoo's cold voice was heard. Finally, Snow Murong's face slightly changed. She stared fixedly at Yunwoo. You. What kind of trick did you play? Hearing her words, Yunwoo curved her lips and folded her arms before her chest, looking at Snow Murong. I like killing people and I'm good at it. It's so not worth it to play dirty tricks in order to kill you, a disabled lady. Don't you think so? Or do you think that I've already killed everyone in this West Wing? The color of Snow Murong's face alternated between red and livid. What was she talking about? You. What about me? Are you afraid I'm going to kill you? Or do you worry that I'll cripple you? At this moment, Yunwoo's smiling face suddenly went cold. I dare you! Snow Murong thundered. Yunwoo suddenly flashed up to her. Watching her amazed face, she said in an icy, low voice, do you believe I can kill you right now? Snow Murong was startled, her body stiff, stammering, You. Snow Murong, you'd better change your snobbish attitude and cut those petty tricks. If it weren't for that you're Grandma Medicine's granddaughter, I would never have let you live after you're trying to have me killed in the Magic Beasts forest. Snow Murong's heart was involuntarily quivering after she heard Yunwoo's piercingly cold voice. Watching Yunwoo, who was staring at her closely, Snow Murong felt her heart tremble. Anger, annoyance and hatred seemed to have been frozen at this moment. She could see it from the look in Yunwoo's eyes that she really intended to kill her. How? How dared she? But then Snow Murong couldn't help recalling the scene in the mansion of the Murong family's offshoot. She dared to. She really dared to. When this positive answer flashed across her mind, Snow Murong's face abruptly went ghastly pale, horror glinting in her eyes. Her deathly pale face and the horrified look on it seemed to be exactly what Yunwoo wanted to see. With a half-smile on her icy face, she slowly curved her lips, stretched out her hand and gently stroked Snow Murong's legs which were on the bed. Rest assured. I don't want to kill you for the moment. From now on, be smart and don't do anything stupid. Otherwise, it's very likely that one day at night, when you're asleep, your legs will be separated from your body. That would be quite a shame, right? Her voice was very, very low, as if she was mumbling and they were the only people who could hear it. The feel of Yunwoo's hands moving on her legs sent chills down Snow Murong's spine. The horror in her was expanding like a black hole as Yunwoo talked. This woman was definitely a devil. Seeing Snow Murong's stiff body and her eyes wide with horror, Yunwoo seemed to be in a very good mood, the smile on her face growing bigger. Finally, the hands on her legs were slowly withdrawn. However, before Snow Murong could relax, the cold voice was heard again, "From now on, be cautious and don't offend me, because retaliation is my favorite game." Seeing that Snow Murong was glaring at her but too afraid to say anything, Yunwoo turned around with a smile and left the room at a leisurely pace. However, she had just walked a few steps away from the doorway when the sound of someone breaking things abruptly came from inside the room. Bang, bang. She knew who that was without even thinking about it. Yunwoo ignored her. Those things she was breaking belonged to her own family anyway. But after seeing that look on Snow Murong's face, Yunwoo felt exceptionally delighted. Let this be a lesson to that Snow Murong. In the East Garden. In Wilderness Murong's dwelling. At this moment, the living room of the East Garden was crowded with people. Most were sitting but there were also some people standing. Everybody seemed anxious. Wasn't he all right yesterday? Why this morning he? What happened exactly? Sitting beside the host's seat, the third uncle said with a sullen look on his face. Earth Murong, who was beside him, said, "Yesterday, the venerable mistress went to see father, and then this morning, father's condition worsened." Hearing this, many people present furrowed their brows. Third younger brother, you shouldn't have said this if you haven't seen it yourself. Otherwise, elder brother might think that we're against the venerable mistress personally. Sky Murong, who was sitting in a guest seat on the right side, said in a deep voice. But everybody could understand the explicit undertone his words contained. Second elder brother, I'm not making this up. Ever since the venerable mistress came back, she has always been going in and out of father's room. Everybody in this family saw it. She claimed that she had medical skills and is now trying to treat father with those bottles and pots nobody knows where she got from. Hearing this, the third uncle's brow furrowed. Treat him? How can she treat him? Didn't the doctor say that no treatment should be carried out before the messenger drug is found? Third uncle, I tried to stop her, but elder brother trusts the venerable mistress and said that we should let her have a try. What else could I have done? Nonsense. Angry, the third uncle smacked a palm on the table. What's wrong with his lordship? He inexplicably acknowledged a woman as his mother and also adopted a daughter. Now the venerable master is critically ill, but he still allows that person mess around. Isn't he risking the venerable master's life? That's true. Even the medic who has superb medical skills didn't know how to treat this disease. Yet that old woman can treat it. Isn't she deliberately trying to make things worse? I think that old woman's identity is very suspicious. Maybe she's afraid that the venerable master will see through her if he recovers, so she wants to. Yes. It's been decades after that happened. Who can still remember? If we allow her to treat the venerable master, I'm afraid the venerable master will be. People in the living room started speculating, each speculation more ungrounded than the former. The look on the third uncle's face was becoming more and more sullen. He did still remember Grandma Medicine, but it had been decades, and nobody could verify her version of events. How could they know what her true intention was? Instantly, the third uncle stood up. Enough. Let's go there and see what's going on. Hearing this, all those sitting around also stood up, followed the third uncle and headed for the inner courtyard. In a spacious room. Sitting beside a bed, Grandma Medicine was feeling the pulse of that fatty lying in bed. The fatty in bed was nobody else but that wilderness Murong. He seemed to be barely in his 60s but was bloated. At first sight, anybody would think that he was a fatty. "Mother, how's he doing?" Watching Grandma Medicine, who had just withdrawn her hand, Cloud Murong asked in an undertone. With a sepulchral look on her face, Concubine Chu was standing beside him, but because of Cloud Murong's presence, she tried to conceal her true feeling. "His pulse is much weaker than it was yesterday. Maybe it is because of the loss of blood. Now the bleeding has stopped. I'll check him again in a while," said Grandma Medicine. Watching the bandaged arm of Wilderness Murong, Cloud Murong knitted his eyebrows tightly together. Why did his skin crack without good cause? Grandma Medicine furrowed her brow with a deeply concerned look on her face. The distension has been exacerbating and people's skin has limited elasticity. Judging from the current situation, his skin is probably under too much strain. As a result, blood had spurted out the moment the wound had cracked. If it weren't for that they discovered very soon and stopped the bleeding in time, there might have been unimaginable consequences. "Granny, there's blood all over you. Why don't you go back and change clothes? I'll stay here watching him." Little Leaf was also standing beside the bed. She hadn't recovered from her injured fingers yet, so she wasn't able to help with the treatment. Grandma Medicine had just stopped the bleeding for Wilderness Murong and her clothes were splattered with blood, and so were the clothes of Cloud Murong and a couple of handmaids. Cloud Murong also noticed the blood on Grandma Medicine. "Mother, you should go back and change clothes. Both I and my second mother are here, so there's nothing to be worried about. Everything will be fine." Hearing this, Concubine Chu, who was standing at the side, walked forward and dragged Grandma Medicine to her feet. "Elder sister, Yuna was right. Your clothes are too dirty. Just go back and change your clothes. I got this." Displeased with her rudeness, Little Leaf frowned. But Grandma Medicine hurriedly stopped her. Much as she was concerned about Wilderness Murong's condition, she wanted to spare Cloud Murong any awkwardness. No matter what, he had been regarding Concubine Chu as his natural mother over the past 40 or 50 years, so he must be having a tough time dealing with the sensitive relationship between them. "All right, then. I'll go back first. If you need me, Little Jing, walk her back." Before Grandma Medicine could finish her sentence, Concubine Chu winked at her personal handmaid who was standing beside her. Seeing her hint, the handmaid walked up to Grandma Medicine. She seemed to be supporting her but was actually dragging her with great force, which gave Grandma Medicine pain. Seeing this, Little Leaf was so angry that her face changed, meaning to ran up to her. "Granny." But Grandma Medicine shot her a warning glance and stopped her. "Little Leaf, stay here and help Granny take care of Grandpa." Little Leaf was very angry, but these days, her granny had repeatedly told her that no matter what happened, they had to put up with it. However, these people had been bullying them all along. Little Leaf felt that they went too far. It had been only a few days, but a lot of bruises had appeared on Granny. Little Leaf was both distressed and angry. But her granny still didn't allow her to tell anybody. "Your lordship, elder mistress, I'll walk the venerable mistress back to her room." Little Jing slightly bent her knees in front of Cloud Murong and Concubine Chu to pay her respect and then assisted Grandma Medicine to walk towards the doorway. She was heavily pinching Grandma Medicine's arm, and the latter furrowed her brow in pain. "Venerable mistress, be careful. This threshold is tall. Watch your step, little Jing said in a somewhat brittle voice in front of a threshold at the gateway of a courtyard. They had left the inner chamber and were out of Cloud Murong's sight. Secretly, little Jing gave Grandma Medicine a hard pinch on the arm and then kicked Grandma Medicine's leg while she was in pain. Grandma Medicine directly fell over, as if she had been tripped by someone. Thud. Air. Grandma Medicine fell to the ground with a muffled thud and uttered a groan. Standing in front of the threshold, little Jing gave a grim smile. This damn old woman dares to groan? She walked forward and, accidentally, stepped on Grandma Medicine's hand. Under the heavy strain, the sound of a bone breaking was heard. Grandma Medicine broke out in a cold sweat due to the sharp pain, trying to withdraw her hand. But little Jing pretended that she didn't see it, a sneer on her face. Old woman, why are you still on the ground? You want someone to raise you to your feet? TSK, TSK. You really think you're the venerable mistress of the Murong family? You should have looked into the mirror more often. You think you deserve it? This old woman was like a thorn in Elder Mistress's flesh. Elder Mistress had ordered her to snatch at every chance to make this old woman's life miserable. As the personal handmaid of concubine Chu, this little Jing naturally knew some ruthless tactics. Seeing that Grandma Medicine was trying hard to suppress the pain and that there were beads of cold sweat all over her forehead, little Jing felt an evil pleasure and trod even harder. But at this moment, sharp-eyed little Jing noticed that in the distance, a group of people were walking in her direction. The sneer on her face instantly disappeared and she affected an air of humbleness. Venerable Mistress, are you okay? I told you this threshold was tall and reminded you to watch your step. Why were you so careless? Saying this, little Jing raised Grandma Medicine to her feet with an affected concerned look. Are you hurt? It's my fault. I should have supported Venerable Mistress. Followed by a group of relatives, the third uncle, whose name was Sword Murong, saw this scene the moment he arrived at the courtyard, frowning. What happened? The third uncle said in a deep, highly commanding voice. Before Grandma Medicine could speak, little Jing respectfully bowed and replied, I'm guilty. I should have supported the Venerable Mistress. The Venerable Mistress fell over. I deserve the punishment the Venerable Mistress meted out to me. Hearing this, Sword Murong's forehead furrowed and darted a severe glance at Grandma Medicine. His face darkened when he saw the blood on her clothes. I heard that you treated Huang Er. I did. Third uncle. Grandma Medicine respectfully answered Sword Murong, suppressing the pain in her hand. However, the faces of those people behind Sword Murong darkened when they heard her answer. It seemed as if they went angry. You old woman. Murong family has already taken in you 3 freeloaders. What is it that you're still displeased with? What is it that you're up to? Why do you want to kill my elder uncle? Humph. I wonder what kind of overpowering drug this old woman used on his lordship. He actually allowed her to risking old lord's life. I'm telling you, old woman, if anything happened to old lord, I'll skin you alive with my own hands. Grandma Medicine's face went paler and paler as she heard those doubts and threats expressed in angry voices. She knew that almost the whole Murong family doubted her identity. They disagreed with her return and even suspected that she had bewildered Cloud Murong with some kind of trick. For the sake of her son, she was willing to swallow any humiliation and any pain was bearable for her, but today, after hearing all these suspicions and angry voices, even if she could swallow all their remarks, how could she not feel miserable? Seeing that Grandma Medicine kept silent, everybody believed that she admitted her sins tacitly. Humph, like I said, this old woman harbors malevolent intentions. I believe the reason why old lord's health deteriorated so rapidly was because this old woman did something to him. I can tell she's an evildoer on the sight of her looks. Then in your eyes, what does a good doer look like? Right on cue, an extremely apathetic voice came from behind the crowd like a giant rock fallen from the sky. Hearing that voice, all those who were making harsh remarks furrowed her brow and asked in a deep voice, who is it? Who's talking? What is it? After they turned their heads back and looked in the direction of the source of the sound, everybody was stunned. That was a very beautiful teenage girl about 15 or 16 years old, with willow leaf-shaped eyebrows, starry purple eyes and snow-white skins. Her purple clothes provided a perfect foil for an air of nobility mixed with apathy about her. This teenager girl seemed to be exerting a kind of lethal charm even if she wasn't talking. When did this teenage girl as beautiful as a figure in a painting came to the Murong mansion? Yunwoo coldly glanced at the crowd and then slowly walked forward. Surprisingly, those people involuntarily made way for her. I heard that all you gentlemen are very displeased with us three freeloading outsiders. Hearing this, everybody was stunned. What did she mean? You, old man. You led all these people here to express your displeasure. What do you want to say? Today, you might as well spit it out in front of me. You don't have to tell outsiders that we're the Lord's mother and goddaughter, when actually, in private, you all despise us. You might not think it's shameful, but I do. Upon these words, Yunwoo looked in the direction of Sword Murong. Sword Murong's face was sullen. Given the extraordinary endowments of this teenage girl, he believed Cloud Murong did the right thing by adopting her to co-opt her, but she was too arrogant. How dared she talk to him like this? The faces of all the others present also instantly went livid after hearing her words. She was the goddaughter of his lordship. Many people of the Murong family hadn't met Yunwoo yet. Seeing that she made such remarks in front of the elders of the Murong family at the first encounter, all people present were somewhat annoyed. Grandma Medicine hurriedly walked up to Yunwoo and grabbed her hand. Wooer, this is the third uncle, one of the elders of our family. Don't talk to him like that. An elder? In her eyes, even that Cloud Murong was merely a thick-skinned guy, and this so-called elder was just a dotard whose authority was based on his old age. However, sharp-eyed Yunwoo noticed Grandma Medicine's red and swollen hand on which there was still half a distinct footprint. Abruptly, a murderous look flashed across the bottom of her eyes. She turned her head aside, purple eyes sweeping around. Eventually, her eyes rested on little Jing who was stealthily hiding behind others. When the piercing look was darted at her, little Jing's heart lurched and she subconsciously took a step backwards. With a flip of her hand, Yunwoo drew a black whip out of thin air and swung it. Like a swift snake, the black whip abruptly shot at little Jing. Standing in front of little Jing was a member of the younger uncle generation. Seeing Yunwoo's sudden move, he thought that she was targeting him. His face suddenly darkened. Tier 6 peak stage chi surging out, he quickly fought back against Yunwoo. Thud! Two forces impacted with each other, making a muffled bang. That younger uncle's face abruptly changed. When that whip came at him again, he sidestepped the blow in a somewhat embarrassing way. You! She was actually more powerful than him. When that younger uncle's face blushed scarlet, that black whip quickly wrapped itself around little Jing's waist. With a violent swing of the whip, Yunwoo heavily threw her away towards the stone arch. With a loud bang, that stone arch seemed to have been cracked under the force of the collision. Pooh! With a muffled crash, little Jing's body hit the stone wall and spat a mouthful of blood as she landed. She nearly passed out. Seeing this, the faces of Sword Murong and all others present darkened. Phoenix Wu, why did you do this? Sword Murong reprimanded in a deep, angry and cold voice. Seeing that little Jing was thrown away, that younger uncle, who had just dodged aside, still thought that Yunwoo was aiming at him, and that she mistook little Jing as the target. His face was extremely sepulchral. How dare you attack your elder? This is rebellion. Guards! Tie her up. The third uncle reprimanded, and with that guards quickly flooded into the courtyard from various directions. Anxious, Grandma Medicine hurriedly stepped forward and hid Yunwoo behind her. Third uncle, please don't be angry with her. She's still young and didn't mean those impertinent words. You old woman. It's not your place to talk. Get lost before that person could finish his sentence. Slap. The sound of someone's face being slapped was distinctly heard. Before that younger uncle could react, a clear handprint appeared on his face, his eyes glinting with confusion. What she did also amazed everybody else present, including Grandma Medicine. Yunwoo looked at him coldly. This slap is for my granny, who's also your sister-in-law. After saying those words in an icy cold voice, Yunwoo swung the whip at little Jing, who was trying to pick herself up from the ground, once again. She pulled the whip and little Jing was dragged over, lying prostrate in front of her. Under the gaze of the crowd, Yunwoo raised her foot and then heavily trod on the back of her left hand. Snap! A distinct sound of bones breaking was heard. Ah! She let out a pained scream, which was so piercing that it seemed to have split the air. However, this was just the beginning. The next moment, the same thing happened to her right hand. Snap! Ah! Another shrill shriek was heard as the bones of her right hand broke. The sharp pain in her hands was so unbearable that little Jing rolled her eyes and passed out on the spot. Seeing this, all people present furrowed their foreheads. What a ruthless girl. There are so many elders in front of you. What are you doing? Sword Murong said in a cold, solemn voice. Watching Yunwoo, who had just broken the bones of the handmaid's hands with 2 stamps, he felt that his authority was challenged. Angry as he was, he still retained his avuncular manner. What he didn't know was that Yunwoo hated this manner of his the most. What am I doing? Are you blind? Can't you see it? Sword Murong's face went sepulchral after hearing this. All the others present also instantly got provoked, torrents of powerful chi circulating in them. So arrogant. How dare she talk to us like this? Her behavior is way too unruly. His lordship adopted her, and she really thinks that she's a lady of the Murong family now. She's so ruthless. Let's eliminate her kung fu from her. Third uncle, Wooer, is still young and unsophisticated. Please don't be angry with her. Anxious and concerned, Grandma Medicine hurriedly interceded with Sword Murong. But Sword Murong's face was sullen and full of rage. Granny, there's no need for you to intercede with them. These members of Murong Mansion are all hypocrites. You see. Even a cheap handmaid like her dares to bully you who are her mistress. How much better could these haughty members of Murong Mansion possibly be? I think this is what they always have been like. What was humiliation? At this moment, these remarks of Yunwoo's humiliated all members of the Murong Mansion. Swish! The sounds of powerful chi surging out came from all directions. Killing aura almost instantly pervaded the whole courtyard. Tension in the courtyard was reaching a flashpoint. Startled, Grandma Medicine hurriedly walked up to Yunwoo and said, Wooer, say no more. However, Yunwoo had an intention to make a scene. Why should I stop talking? Now that these hypocrites are all here, let them see with their own eyes how this venomous handmaid bullied her mistress. Yunwoo grabbed Grandma Medicine's hand and raised it, revealing her red, swollen hand which blood was oozing out of. On the back of the red, swollen hand, a footprint could still be distinctly seen. Even a fool could tell that somebody did this on purpose. Sword Murong knitted his eyebrows. They all knew that little Jing, who was lying unconscious on the ground, was Concubine Chu's personal handmaid. Was she really? I'm fine. Grandma Medicine withdrew her hand. Granny, I brought you back to this Murong mansion not to let you be bullied. If I hadn't happened to see this, are you planning to keep this a secret from me? You are going to swallow all this? Granny, I'm your granddaughter, and like I said, I'll never let anybody bully you as long as I'm alive. Wooer. Grandma Medicine was deeply touched and her eyes reddened. Since this venomous handmaid bullied you, I must repay her the favor in double. Otherwise, they might think that we're duck soup. All people present heard Yunwoo's remarks distinctly. Yunwoo's foot was still on little Jing's right hand. Irrespective of how those people might react, she gave another stamp on that hand. Snap! Ah! Little Jing, who was in a coma, woke up due to the agony, letting out another pained scream. At the same time, she broke out in a cold sweat. As the saying goes, 10 fingers are connected with the heart. That great pain clutched at her every nerve. Little Jing was unable to faint even if she wanted to. Let me go. It hurts. Little Jing attempted to withdraw her hand, which caused greater pain, her face going deathly pale. Instead of moving her foot off the hand, Yunwoo trod on it even harder, blood flowing from beneath her foot. All those who saw this felt that this girl was so cold-blooded. Little Jing's pained scream seemed to be making this game even more bloodier. You cheap handmaid. Your scream is still so loud. It seems that this little punishment is far from enough for you. After saying this, Yunwoo wrapped the whip around her and threw her aside again. Bang! A muffled thud was heard, accompanied by the sounds of bones breaking. Like what she had done to Snow Murong in the offshoot mansion of the Murong family, with earth elemental power, Yunwoo lifted little Jing up and heavily threw her down to the ground with her feet landing first. It was painful. Little Jing felt all achy and her feet were numb. Before little Jing could scream, she was thrown away again and hit the arch hard. With a muffled groan, she nearly passed out, pained moans emanating from her throat. You master-bullying venomous handmaid. It seems that you don't die easily. Then this time I'll try your neck. I'd like to find out whether I can separate your head with your body. Seeming to be displeased with what she had seen, Yunwoo swung the whip again, which then wrapped itself around little Jing's neck like a snake. It seemed that Yunwoo would either break little Jing's neck or strangle her if she gave the whip a sharp pull. At this moment, little Jing panicked. Cough. Third Venerable Master, help. Elder Mistress ordered me to do that. I didn't. Sky Murong and Earth Murong had been standing among the crowd. Their faces instantly went livid when they heard little Jing's words. Earth Murong couldn't help hurling a strong bolt of chi towards little Jing. Pooh! Eyes wide, little Jing spat a mouthful of blood and died after being hit by Earth Murong's blow. Yunwoo didn't try to stop Earth Murong from killing little Jing, since all these people had already heard what she wanted them to hear anyway. Eventually, she would also kill her if Earth Murong hadn't. But Earth Murong's behavior gave her an opportunity to expose his true intention. TSK. A natural son is a natural son after all. You know that your mother did shameful things, so you murdered the witness in front of so many people, but all these people are pretending that they didn't see it, as if they were blind. You guys of Murong Mansion are really one of a kind. The look on Sword Murong's face was extremely sepulchral. And all the others present also furrowed their brows and glanced at Earth Murong, wavering between launching an attack on Yunwoo and figuring out what was really going on first. They all heard what little Jing just said. The question was, even so, who would step forward for this unidentified old woman? Hearing Yunwoo's impertinent remarks, they felt humiliated and furious. Little girl, don't go too far. It's not your place to make haughty comments on the Murong family's business. Thud. Bomb. Before that person could finish his sentence, Yunwoo suddenly gave a lateral whip blow, and with that the high wall beside the arch cracked abruptly. With an almighty crash, a long length of the wall collapsed to the ground, large blocks of concrete rolling around. The man who had just talked was shocked, a look of horror crossing his face. All the others present gasped, amazement gleaming in their eyes. That ornamental wall beside the arch was built with the hardest stone, the hardness of which was almost the same as that of refined iron, but that little girl smashed it with a single whip blow? Listen, old men, don't think that you're a cut above others just because you're older. If I decide to respect you, you're my elders, but if I don't, you're nothing. When I said that I could massacre the Murong family, I wasn't joking. Her bloodthirsty purple eyes swept through the crowd. Was she trying to provoke them? No, she was telling the truth. It was not difficult for her to kill these people. Don't forget what she did for a living in her last incarnation. She was best at assassination. She had taken a dislike to this Murong mansion at the very beginning. If it weren't for Grandma Medicine, she would have left this so-called the Murong family long ago. All the others were clenching their fists until they clicked. A murderous look flashed across the bottom of Sword Murong's eyes. However, right at this moment, Cloud Murong and Concubine Chu walked out of that room at a quick pace. This was part of Yunwu's plan. She had smashed that wall to attract the attention of people in the room in case these old men got pushed too hard and made some desperate moves. Mother, third uncle, fifth uncle, younger uncle. Why are you all here? What happened? Seeing that collapsed stone wall, Cloud Murong's forehead furrowed and walked towards the crowd quickly. Concubine Chu closely followed him. When Concubine Chu saw little Jing's body in the corner, her face instantly changed, but she managed to cover all her other moods very well. What happened? Why's the courtyard in such a mess? Your lordship. Elder mistress. Everybody present respectfully greeted Cloud Murong, except for Sword Murong. Yun'er, today, as your third uncle, I want you to evict these unrelated people from Murong family right away. Otherwise, I'll call the elder of the family here. Hearing this, Cloud Murong was stunned. Grandma Medicine was transfixed, but Concubine Chu was delighted. What do you mean, third uncle? Cloud Murong furrowed her brow, clearly having no idea what was going on. You don't understand. Look around here. You will understand my words once you know what has just happened here and what that fledgling little girl has just said. Now for the second time, as your third uncle, I'm asking you to evict these three irrelevant people, immediately. That so-called avuncular, steady manner of Sword Murong had been long gone due to the fury in him. On his face was an extremely black look. Hearing this, instead of getting anxious and angry, Yunwu slightly curved her lips. Is this embarrassed, angry old man asking us to leave? I was actually expecting this, because we really don't want to stay here any longer. Wooer, don't get emotional. Godfather will handle this. Cloud Murong turned his head around and looked at Yunwu. But Yunwu showed him no respect. Arms folded before her chest, she coldly looked at him. You'll handle it. Can you? Look at your mother's hand. That handmaid trod on it and almost broke it. As a son, you failed to protect your mother, and you don't even know which one of your mother's hands got hurt after I told you this. Rather anxious, Grandma Medicine hurriedly withdrew her hand and stopped Yunwu. Say no more, wooer. I'm fine. Granny, I brought you back to live a better life with your son, not to be bullied by these haughty people. Now even a servant dares to hurt you. If things keep going this way, maybe one day you'll be killed by some blind bastard and this son of yours might not know about it. What good is it having a son and a husband if that's the case? Cloud Murong's brow furrowed as he heard Yunwu's remarks, but out of the corner of his eye, he also saw Grandma Medicine's red, swollen hand which she was trying to hide. A cold, angry look flashed across the bottom of his eyes. Who did this? His deep, commanding voice was tinged with rage. A sneer appeared on Yunwu's face. You'll have to ask all these people present this question. That cheap handmaid had just given the name of the mastermind when she got killed by this third patriarch of your family. Now, I think he's going to make a countercharge against us. Earth Murong's face went livid as he heard these sarcastic words, his fists clenching until clicking. But at the same time, Concubine Chu's face also slightly changed. Her cold, sinister eyes darted squarely at Yunwu. This goddamn bitch. You. What about me? You want to say that I'm talking nonsense again? Or do you want to say that I made it up? All these elders present heard it with their own ears. If they hadn't, then they must have gone deaf just now. But, since that third uncle has already made his point, naturally we will leave Murong family. Rest assured. There will be nobody competing with your mother for the position of the venerable mistress, and we, three freeloaders, will no longer bewilder your lord of the city. Before Earth Murong could speak, Yunwoo talked. Though her tone was casual, she directly conveyed all that should be conveyed. The faces of Sword Murong and those elders went extremely sepulchral after they heard these words. Hearing this, Cloud Murong glanced at little Jing, who was already dead in the corner, and then glimpsed at Earth Murong, face gradually going cold. He was just about to speak. The venerable master's skin cracked and he's bleeding again. Suddenly, a handmaid urgently ran up to them, yelling in anxiety. This shocking news immediately ruined Yunwoo's plan, as if a bomb had just exploded. Cloud Murong and others rapidly went to Wilderness Murong's room. Meanwhile, a guard hastily led a doctor carrying a medicine chest into the room. Anxious, Grandma Medicine wanted to get in, but those elders stopped her outside the room with a clear intention of evicting her. Yunwoo was relaxed, and she also told Grandma Medicine to calm down. Handmaids were going in and out of the room frequently. Water in those basins they carried out was red, and there were also stains of blood on their clothes, indicating that the condition of the patient was not very optimistic. Venerable Mistress, His Lordship requires your presence. Finally, a handmaid hastily walked out of the inner room and said respectfully to Grandma Medicine. On hearing this, Grandma Medicine, who had been eager to go inside all along, rapidly entered the room. Yunwoo didn't try to stop her but wanted to follow. Not everybody is allowed to go inside. A man about 30 years ago blocked Yunwoo's path. You snotty girl. What happened to your cocky attitude? You said that you would leave, so get your ass out of Murong family right now. However, before that man could finish his sentence, Yunwoo's figure twisted in front of him and disappeared in the blink of an eye. She was nowhere to be found and they couldn't even detect her chi, as if she had vanished into thin air. Wah, what happened? She was right in front of them just now. How could she just disappear like that? Astonishment and disbelief gleamed in the eyes of those outside the door. Inside the room, there were a lot of people standing in the spacious inner room, which made it seem a little crowded. At this moment, Sword Murong was standing beside the bed. Grandma Medicine wasn't treating the patient. Clearly Sword Murong didn't allow her to do so. That doctor was still trying hard to stop the bleeding caused by the cracked skin. Little Leaf was standing behind the crowd. She was crowded out by those elders. Elder sister. Little Leaf grinned at her and called when she saw Yunwoo, who had just suddenly appeared behind her. Yunwoo raised her finger to her lips as a sign for silence. She looked in the direction of Wilderness Murong lying in bed. Compared with what he looked like the first time Yunwoo sneaked in here to see him, Wilderness Murong was now clearly a lot more bloated. She exerted her spiritual power on Wilderness Murong and found that his body was reaching its limit. Without proper medical treatment, his body would probably explode in a day or two. Originally, Yunwoo planned to stand by, but seeing Grandma Medicine's red eyes and her anxious look, she couldn't help giving a sigh. In front of all those people, she strode forward and pulled aside the doctor who was sweating buckets. And then, with a sudden move of her fingers, 3 silver needles swished forward and stuck into Wilderness Murong's arteria carotis, right shoulder and armpit. Everybody present was stunned by her abrupt behavior. Sword Murong was standing beside the bed. His face suddenly darkened. What are you doing? You cheap little girl. Stop. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Concubine Chu mobilized her fighting spirit and swung a slap in Yunwoo's direction. She had been meaning to teach this damn girl a lesson for a long time. But the next second, her hand instantly paused in midair. It turned out that a silver needle had stuck into one of her acupoints. But right at this moment, Yunwoo slit Wilderness Murong's left hand with her palm, and almost at the same instant when the skin was cut open, a fountain of blood abruptly spurted out, splattering around. However, Yunwoo managed to take Grandma Medicine and flash behind Little Leaf. Father! Old Lord! Exclamations of panic were heard in the room. Cloud Murong and all others present flooded towards the bed and were splashed with blood. Wooer, why did you? Grandma Medicine also appeared startled, face full of anxiety. Yunwoo said to her in a low voice, "Granny, his body is reaching its limit. If we don't bleed him, he will explode and die in 1 or 2 days. Rest assured. He'll survive the bleeding." Grandma Medicine was stunned by her words, and with that she was relieved. Pulling a wry face, she looked at Yunwoo and said, "Wooer, don't do such scary things again. I'm really frightened. If I want to scare people, I'll scare them." Yunwoo made an inexplicable remark, a cold look flashing across the bottom of her eyes. Naturally, Grandma Medicine and Little Leaf couldn't understand. But at this moment, one of those people at the rear of the crowd turned his head back and saw Yunwoo and the other two who were standing behind him. Face full of anger, he thundered, "You bitch! How dare you kill Old Lord? Today, I'll kill you and avenge Old Lord's murder." Saying this, the man instantly launched an attack on Yunwoo. Grandma Medicine wanted to explain, but Yunwoo stopped her. "It seems that you people of Murong family always try to kill us whenever you got the chance." Saying this in a cold voice, Yunwoo flashed aside, dodged that man's blow and then dealt an edge-hand blow to that man's neck. Thud, that man fell to the ground. The man who attacked Yunwoo was nobody else but that younger uncle who was at Tier 6 and had tried to fight her in the courtyard. Some people just couldn't stop courting humiliation. No matter what the reason was, as long as they felt that they lost face, they snatched at every chance to take revenge. "How dare you continue hurting people?" After seeing what Yunwoo did, all those elders in the room went furious, their chi flaring up. "Enough! Everybody stop! This is my father's room. Please be quiet, uncles," Cloud Murong reprimanded in a deep, angry voice. Hearing this, all people present furrowed her brow. Sword Murong's face was also sepulchral. "Wooer, do you by any chance know how to treat my father's strange disease?" Cloud Murong looked in the direction of Yunwoo. He saw Yunwoo treated people with bizarre medical skills before, and the drugs she made also had great efficacy. Besides, Grandma Medicine was here, so she wouldn't do anything she shouldn't do. As a result, after seeing what Yunwoo did, Cloud Murong was wondering whether she was rendering medical treatment to his father. But Yunwoo didn't even turn her head back, saying in a cold voice, "I don't know how to treat him. Neither do I want to. But this quack doctor you invited here was merely pushing your old lord closer to death." "What did you say? You fledgling little girl. How dare you vilify me like this?" After hearing Yunwoo's remarks, that doctor, who had just been pulled aside by her, got so angry that even his mustache lifted. Everybody knew that he was the best doctor in the Luo city. "I vilified you. Do you know that the skin of the old lord in bed has already been stretched to its limit? If you had touched him one more time, he would have exploded." Yunwoo's remarks astounded that doctor. But soon, the doctor's face darkened. "You fledgling little girl knows nothing about medical treatment, so cut the nonsense. The old lord is fine. How is it possible that his body poo?" Right on cue, a muffled sound of blood spurting out abruptly came from Wilderness Murong's arm. Blood splashed in all directions. Sword Murong, Concubine Chu, Cloud Murong and his two brothers as well as that doctor were all splashed with blood. This sudden occurrence startled a lot of people. How did this happen?" With a slight change of his facial expression, the doctor was stunned. At this moment, without walking forward, Yunwoo raised her hand and suctioned out the 3 silver needles sticking in Wilderness Murong's body. However, Yunwoo didn't take back the 3 silver needles but casually waved her hand and tossed the needles to the ground. Then in a seemingly unconcerned voice, she said, "It's done. Use the astringent drug my granny just used to stop the bleeding and bandage the wound. Your old lord is safe during the next 5 days." Originally those elders didn't believe her, but then they saw that the moment those silver needles were pulled out, the distension of Wilderness Murong's body started reducing at a noticeable speed. This weird scene stunned everybody present and they all went silent. She really had medical skills. Stunned as well, Sword Murong looked in Yun Wu's direction with a solemn face. Cloud Murong was surprised and delighted. "Wooer, you," but Cloud Murong had just spoke when Yun Wu raised her hand and hushed him. "Don't call me that. We're not that close to each other. As 3 freeloaders, we have already been evicted from the Murong mansion, so she's no longer your mother, and I'm no longer your goddaughter." Yun Wu slightly curved her lips in a faint smile and said. However, faces of all people present darkened again when they heard her remarks, frowning. What did this girl mean? Was she trying to put up a front at this moment? By the way, there's another issue I'd like to tell you. As those elders became displeased, something seemed to have just occurred to Yun Wu. What is it? Asked Cloud Murong. Watching them with a smile, Yun Wu said, what your old lord caught is a rare disease similar to pestilence which is highly infectious. Anyone whose skin got splashed with his blood will be infected. Symptoms might appear immediately or 3 to 5 days after infection at the latest. Infected people's bodies will slowly swell and eventually become just like that of him. When the swelling exceeds a certain point, their bodies will explode. So, if your old lord's skin cracks again and blood spurts out, you should be careful and make sure you don't get splashed with his blood. What? Faces of all people present instantly changed as they heard this. Got splashed with the blood? Almost all people in this room had just crowded around the bed to check the old lord and had been splashed with some of his blood. Yun Wu and Little Leaf, who had been standing behind them all the time, might be the only 2 who weren't splattered with the blood. She knew this all along but didn't tell them until now. Wasn't this intentional? No wonder. No wonder she had been standing behind them all the time and didn't even get those silver needles back. This vicious girl. Oh. I almost forgot to tell you. This pestilence is highly infectious and my granny is the only one who can treat it. But, I'm sorry to tell you, my granny is willing to treat everybody in this world but by no means will she treat anyone from this Murong family. If you think I'm lying, I suggest you ask that quack to feel his pulse right now lest he infect anybody else. Now please excuse us, but we're busy. Yun Wu made these remarks. In front of all those people, taking Grandma Medicine and Little Leaf with her, Yun Wu turned into a whirlwind and flashed out of the room. Her speed was so fast that nobody had enough time to react before she left. When Sword Murong, Concubine Chu, and the others realized what had happened, the 3 persons were no longer in the room. I have an itch. Is it possible that the girl was telling the truth? Someone in the room said. Hearing this, all people in the room panicked. Everybody began to check themselves to see whether or not their skins were splashed with blood. Concubine Chu's acupoint was struck and she was the one whose face changed the most drastically. She had been standing at the bedside and was splashed with the most blood. There was also a dramatic expression on Sword Murong's old face. Don't believe that fledgling little girl's words. Father has been ill for so long. If it were really pestilence, it would have spread already. How is it possible? Sky Murong said with a sepulchral face. However, an exclamation was heard before he could finish his sentence. It swelled. Eyes full of horror, that doctor watched his blood-stained arm which had already begun to bloat. Distending pain and numbness was slowly spreading towards other parts of his body from that bloated arm, which he could feel distinctly. His old face abruptly turned ghastly white. Seeing this, all the others in the room immediately drew back almost subconsciously. However, before long, a couple of others also began to feel that kind of strange distending pain and numbness. Third uncle, it's true. What should we do? Your lordship. There was an instantaneous change of atmosphere in the room. Cloud Murong might be the calmest person in the room. He took a small bottle from the tray beside him, which contained the styptic powder that he had once seen Grandma Medicine use, walked up to the bed and applied the powder to Wilderness Murong's bleeding arm. Yunner, don't. Your lordship, it's too risky. Seeing this, Sword Murong and all the others hurriedly tried to stop him. Cloud Murong was now the lord of Luo City as well as the patriarch of the Murong family. How could he take such risks? Third uncle, if this is really pestilence, then we're now all infected. You think there are still risks? Hearing Cloud Murong's words, all people in the room became pale and silent. Yes. If it was really pestilence, then all of them must have been infected already, so. Right on cue, a voice and some footsteps came from the doorway. Your lordship, I just saw that fledgling little girl left with that old woman and that kid. Did something happen? Don't come in. Go to the eastern garden. From now on, all those who once touched Old Lord or his blood must be isolated. Cloud Murong's deep, cold voice instantly came from inside the room. On a street in the Luo city. Yun Wu was strolling around, seemingly curious about those commodities in the busy street. Elder sister, look at these colorful candies, Little Leaf's delighted voice tinged with amazement came. Then she started raking around in her pockets, as if trying to find the copper coins she hid as case dough. We'll take these. Yun Wu directly tossed a silver ingot to the vendor, which was more than enough to pay for those candies. Grinning from ear to ear, the vendor hurriedly wrapped up those colorful candies and passed it to Little Leaf. Watching that big bundle of candies, Little Leaf was both astonished and rejoiced, but also a little worried that they overpaid the vendor. Elder sister, you overpaid for these candies. Little Leaf hastily ran up to Yun Wu and said. It's okay. Elder sister has a lot of money and can buy you a lot of candies. Smiling, Yun Wu stroked her little head and said. More than half of her storage space was filled with treasures, which was probably several times more than how much she could spend in her life. She was always generous to those who were good to her. Though still feeling that it was a waste of money to pay a silver ingot for these candies, Little Leaf was still very happy when she looked at that big bundle in her arms. All kids liked snacks and sweets, especially colorful ones. But she didn't eat them herself but hurriedly passed the bundle of candies to Yun Wu. Elder sister, try one. Back then I said that I would buy you sweetmeats. There's no sweetmeats for sale for the moment, but candies are just as delicious. Actually, buying sweetmeats was exactly the reason why she went downtown that day. It was just that she was caught halfway home, and that small pack of sweetmeats she bought was also lost. Yun Wu was stunned. Watching Little Leaf, who was handing her the candies with a broad grin, she couldn't help being touched. This silly girl keeps this in mind all along. Yun Wu took a candy and put it into her mouth, and then stretched out her hand and stroked Little Leaf's little head. Well, elder sister had one. You can keep the rest of them. There are so many. It's okay. You can share them with your friends after you go home. Go home. Are we really going to go home? Little Leaf's eyes lit up. Though the living condition was very good in the Murong mansion, in her eyes, it was merely an unfamiliar place. Besides, people in there frequently bullied her in private, so she didn't like that place at all. But that place was her granny's. Seeming to have just thought of something, Little Leaf hurriedly turned her head back and looked at Grandma Medicine, who was slowly walking behind them with a preoccupied face. Grandma Medicine was wearing a cape which was given to her by Yun Wu to cover her blood-stained clothes. After they left the Murong mansion, Yun Wu didn't take them back to the village right away but led them to this street to do shopping. Though Grandma Medicine didn't say anything, judging by the concerned look on her face, Yun Wu could tell that she was definitely worried about those people in the Murong mansion. Pestilence. Grandma Medicine had never heard of this kind of disease before, but she had seen Yun Wu's medical skills, so she knew by no means would Yun Wu have made a wrong diagnosis. How could Grandma Medicine not worry? Watching Grandma Medicine's concerned face, Yun Wu was somewhat depressed. In face, she couldn't quite understand why Grandma Medicine wasn't angry after what members of the Murong family had done to her. Why was she still worried about those people? Alas! Maybe it was because of the so-called bonds of kinship between family members, but for the moment, she couldn't quite understand. After looking around the busy street, Yun Wu asked Little Leaf to stay with Grandma Medicine and then headed for the busiest part of the street. Of course, she was not really planning to go shopping. She tossed some silver ingots onto the ground at the most uproarious spot, from which a shocking news soon started rippling outwards like a furious wave. Yunwoo scattered those silver ingots and the news started spreading. After that, Yunwoo bought Little Leaf a lot of delicious snacks, hired a horse-drawn carriage and leisurely left the city, heading towards that remote village. As regards what would happen next, she wasn't worried at all. After all, those who were supposed to turn up would eventually turn up on their own account. Not long after they left, a news caused a sensation in the whole city. There was a panic among residents which resulted in a protest, and the government nearly dispatched the garrison to suppress it. After a short time, the news spread to the Water City. In the Ouyang mansion. What did you say? Pestilence? How's that possible? Ouyang Qing's face was full of disbelief when he heard the news reported by his subordinate. The symptoms of the disease his father caught were exactly the same as those of the disease Wilderness Murong caught. If what that Wilderness Murong caught was pestilence, wasn't this suggesting that his father also caught it? By no means could this be true. Second Patriarch, now this news has spread through the whole Luo city. In the Murong mansion, the old lord suffered a relapse. His skin cracked and blood spurted out. All those who got splashed with his blood were infected. So far, a couple of those who touched the blood has shown symptoms of distension. Even that best doctor in the Luo city himself is also infected. With a frown on it, Ouyang Qing's mild face slightly changed when he heard this. Besides, I secretly made a few inquiries outside the Murong mansion. Those infected people in the Murong mansion has already been isolated. Lord Murong included, most people in the mansion are infected. Now a junior member of the Murong family's offshoot is temporarily in charge of the Luo city. What? Even Cloud Murong is infected. A couple of figures quickly walked through the door and entered the room. Ouyang Yu was in front of the others. There was a frown and a somewhat solemn look on his mild face. Second uncle, we've just got news from the Luo city. It is said that there's an outbreak of pestilence in the Luo city, and that Wilderness Murong is the source of it. Is it true? Ouyang Ko followed Ouyang Yu into the room, a concerned look on his face. If Wilderness Murong was really the source, then his grandfather might also be. This news was also a bolt from the blue for the Ouyang family. I just heard the news myself. Ouyang Qing stood up and moved to another seat on the side, letting Ouyang Yu sit on the host seat. A couple of other members of the Ouyang family sat on the two sides of the living room. Right before I came here, I sent someone to get the medic. This morning, I found that father was not in a very good condition. After sitting down, Ouyang Yu said in a deep voice. Your lordship, if the news from the Luo city is true, we have to take precautions in advance, one of the people in the living room said. Yes. This issue could have serious consequences. Your lordship and second patriarch should think twice and then make proper arrangements. Ouyang Yu and Ouyang Qing furrowed their foreheads with solemn faces. If that was the case, were they supposed to isolate their father? At this moment, the guard who had just reported the news said, Your lordship, second patriarch, I also heard a rumor spreading among residents. Keep talking. It is said that only one person in the world can cure this kind of pestilence, Lord Murong's mother whom he found no long ago. Her surname is Medicine. But for some reason, this woman and her two granddaughters left the Murong mansion and returned to a village named Lian Village, which is located to the west of the Luo city. Lian Village to the west of the city. Isn't that an out-of-the-way village on the border between the Luo city and the Water city? Then what are we waiting for? Let's go invite that woman here right now, Ouyang Ko's fifth uncle hurriedly said in a gruff voice. Fifth younger brother, let's verify the news first. No matter that rumor is true or not. The first thing we should do is go to the Murong mansion and sound them out. If it's really pestilence, then we go to invite her. Yes. His lordship is right. It's really weird that this woman whose surname is Medicine left the Murong mansion under this circumstance. Let's figure out what's going on before taking action. Then I'll go there myself and find out the truth. In the Lien village. News that Yunwu had taken Grandma Medicine and Little Leaf back soon spread through this small village of simplicity. The moment they returned to that humble cottage in the valley, all villagers came, bringing with them vegetables, rice, cured meat etc. They showed their gratitude and hospitality. It was not after solicitously talking about each other's well-being for quite a while that they left. That primitive small kitchen was filled with gifts from villagers. Mississippi. As Yunwu turned around, planning to go inside and have a rest, a loud voice came from far away outside the fence. She twisted and looked out. Wasn't that Sister Lee? It was just that she was not alone but supporting a young man, slowly walking towards her. That man was bronze-skinned, neither fat nor thin, and could be counted fairly handsome. He was Sister Li's younger brother Li Shuyang, the man whose abdomen was cut open by a wood wolf that day and who was the first one that Yunwu treated. Li Shuyang's face was still a little pale, but judging by the fact that he was able to walk, he must be making a remarkable recovery. Miss, we heard that you brought Grandma Medicine and Little Leaf back, so we immediately came here. There'd been no news of you since you left, and we were all very concerned. We worried that something might happen to you, so we had old Chen, who lives near the entrance of the village, go to the Luo city to make some inquiries, but he never sent any messages back, which was why we thought that something really had happened. We're very glad that all of you came back safe and sound. Sister Li walked up to Yunwu and couldn't help saying all these words. But Yunwu could distinctly feel the concern in her tone. Yunwu slightly curved her lips and politely smiled at Sister Li. Thank you for your concern, Sister Li. We're fine. We were just handling some issues. It's good to have you back. Oh, this old hen is for you. I reared it myself. You saved my younger brother and my husband. I have nothing else, so I want to give you this hen to show my gratitude to you. You must accept it. Upon these words, Sister Li handed an old hen to Yunwu. In both her last incarnation and this one, this was Yunwu's first time to be offered a thank you gift, so she was not very accustomed to this kind of occasion. But Yunwu didn't decline. Sometimes it was better to allow people to return the favor, which would make them feel better, sparing them the burden of thinking that they owed someone a favor. Seeing that Yunwu accepted the gift willingly, Sister Li was very happy. At this moment, she seemed to have remembered that her younger brother was beside her. Oh, this is my younger brother. His name is Li Shuyang. Yunwu moved her eyes onto Li Shuyang. He looked pretty decent and inoffensive. When his eyes met Yunwu's, a look of timidity crossed Li Shuyang's pale face, but then he thanked Yunwu in a natural, polite manner, saying, "Thank you for saving me, Mississippi. I owe you my life." He said this with a serious look on his face. It was not that big a deal, and you don't owe me your life. Well, don't just stand here. Let's go inside and have a cup of water. Yunwu didn't take his words seriously. Upon these words, she turned around and walked into the cottage. Sister Li turned his head aside and gave a glance at Li Shuyang. Naturally, she noticed the timid look on his face when he was watching Yunwu. It was just that this girl was extraordinary, and she believed that her silly younger brother had only a slim chance. In a border city. One day, a signalman carrying a dispatch from the water city arrived. He galloped directly towards a luxurious mansion. Report, the Lord of the Water City requests Medic Chen's presence in the Water City. The former Lord of the Water City is terminally ill. However, almost immediately after he finished his report, another signalman hurried inside. Report, the Lord of the Luo City urgently requests Medic Chen to go to the Luo City. There's an outbreak of pestilence in the Luo City and residents are in dire need of medical treatment. 2 reports were soon delivered to the owner of the mansion. In the sumptuous living room of the mansion. All furnishings were rich, adding a touch of nobility and extravagance to the living room. At this moment, sitting on the host seat was nobody else but that seventh prince, Zhou Feiyu, whom Yunwu met in the training base located in the suburban forest of the Murong family. He seemed to like black very much. The black brocade robe imparted an air of mystery tinged with unfeelingness to his handsome face. There was barely any reaction when he heard the reports. He slowly picked up a teacup beside him and sipped at the tea, looking noble and solemn. But there was an undetectable, piercing look in his seemingly calm eyes. Your Highness, both the Lord of the Luo City and the Lord of the Water City wanted Medic Chen to go to their cities. There must be something urgent that needs to be dealt with immediately. Beside him stood a man of dignified bearing. He was in his early 30s, eyes piercing and full of wisdom. People could tell at first sight that he was no ordinary person. After slowly taking a sip of the tea, Zhou Feiyu lifted his eyes and gave a glimpse at the man beside him. Since you've already had a grasp of the situation, give the order and make arrangements. Coldness Wu smiled resignedly but still said to Zhou Feiyu respectfully, Your Highness, I'm merely a petty counselor around you. By no means will I dare to give orders on behalf of Your Highness. Save it. Don't act humble in front of me. Go handle this petty issue. Zhou Feiyu gave a cold glance at him and said. This Coldness Wu was a member of the Wu family. He had been serving Zhou Feiyu ever since Zhou Feiyu fought the first battle at the age of 12. Now it had been 9 years. Nominally, they were prince and counselor, master and subordinate, but actually they were also brothers. Seeing the leisurely, uninterested bearing of Zhou Feiyu, Coldness Wu knew exactly what he was thinking about. The Murong family and the Ouyang family had been mortal enemies for generations, but His Highness managed to secretly co-opt both of them. Given the current situation of these two families, he should do something for reasons of either his personal relationship with them or his position. It was just that ever since His Highness returned here from that training base located in the magic beast woods of the Murong family after receiving a dispatch, he had been uninterested in anything, as if he lost his soul. Even his attitude towards Coldness Wu was somewhat inexplicable. And the reason was a girl named Phoenix Wu. You're tuning into the Blissful Bookshelf YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.